I stared at my phone screen, reading the family group message for the third time. "We think it's best you step away for now." 27 family members saw it. My Aunt Martha's thumbs up appeared instantly. After 15 years of being the family's financial backbone, they wanted me gone. My fingers trembled as I typed, "Understood, I'll respect that, and step away from the family fund too." What they didn't know was that their family fund wasn't just my monthly contributions, it was everything. The morning after receiving that message, I found myself sitting in my home office, surrounded by 15 years' worth of financial records. The early sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating stacks of documents that told a story most of my family never knew. My name is Jacqueline, and at 32 years old, I had become something I never intended to be: the invisible foundation holding my entire extended family's financial world together. It hadn't always been this way. My mind drifted back to when I was 17, watching my grandfather pace back and forth in his small hardware store on Maple Street. The worry lines on his face deepened with each passing day as bills piled up and customers dwindled, while my aunts and uncles gathered at Sunday dinners to argue about who should help and how much, pointing fingers and assigning blame. I sat quietly in the corner, observing and learning. That was when I made a decision that would change everything. I pursued a degree in financial technology, working 3 jobs to pay my way through college while my cousins partied on their parents' dime. By 25, I had developed automated systems that major banks were interested in. But instead of selling to the highest bidder, I quietly began implementing these systems for my family. What started as a simple budgeting app for the family fund evolved into something much more complex. The family fund itself began modestly. After Grandpa lost his store, we all agreed to contribute monthly to prevent such disasters in the future. Most family members threw in $50 or $100 when they remembered. I automated my contributions, starting at $500 monthly and increasing as my career flourished. But that was just the tip of the iceberg. Over the years, I had built an intricate web of financial systems. There was the property management software, handling our 12 rental properties across 3 states. The tax optimization program I designed had saved the family over $200,000 annually in completely legal deductions they'd never known existed. The healthcare coordination system I created managed Grandma's complex web of specialists, medications, and insurance claims, ensuring she never missed an appointment or payment. My phone buzzed, interrupting my reflection. An email from my Uncle Pete popped up on the screen. Poor Uncle Pete, who still thought "reply all" was a suggestion rather than a command. He had forwarded what was clearly meant to be a private email chain. My blood ran cold as I read through the messages. The emails revealed everything. There had been a secret family meeting 3 weeks ago held at my cousin Brad's house while I was away at a financial technology conference. Brad, my 35-year-old cousin who still lived in his parents' basement and called himself a cryptocurrency entrepreneur, had orchestrated the entire thing. According to the email chain, Brad had convinced the family that I was controlling and manipulative because I had refused to approve his request for a $50,000 loan from the family fund. What he conveniently failed to mention was that his investment opportunity was in a cryptocurrency called Moon Lambo that was clearly a pyramid scheme. I had done my due diligence, found multiple fraud warnings, and presented them to the family board. Brad had been furious. The emails showed how he had spent weeks poisoning the well, telling relatives that I thought I was better than them, that I was hoarding family resources, that I was building a financial empire on their backs. He painted a picture of me as some sort of puppet master pulling strings from the shadows. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had never sought recognition or control. Every system I built could have been sold to corporations for millions. Instead, I gave them freely to my family, managing them quietly in the background. My Aunt Martha, who had been so quick with her thumbs up, featured prominently in the email chain. Jacqueline has too much power, she had written. Brad is right. We need to take back control of our family's finances. This from a woman who hadn't balanced her own checkbook in 20 years and regularly called me crying when she couldn't figure out why her credit cards were maxed out. The meeting minutes, meticulously typed by Brad's mother, showed they had voted 17-3 to remove me from any financial responsibilities. The 3 dissenting votes came from my grandmother, my sister Emma, and surprisingly, my Uncle Jerome, Martha's husband. The rest of my family, including my own parents, had voted to cast me out. But the most shocking revelation came at the end of the email chain. Brad had already drawn up plans for the new management structure. He would take over as fund manager, with his wife Stephanie as assistant treasurer. They had even set up meetings with financial advisors, lawyers, and accountants, all of whom I noticed were Brad's friends from his failed business ventures. I closed my laptop and leaned back in my chair, a strange sense of calm washing over me. They wanted me to step away, fine. But they had no idea what stepping away actually meant. They thought the family fund was just a shared bank account with some monthly deposits. They had no concept of the intricate financial ecosystem I had built with its interconnected systems, automated processes, and carefully negotiated contracts. My phone rang. It was my business partner, Jennifer, calling from our firm's office downtown. Jacqueline, I just saw your message about implementing Project Exodus. Are you absolutely sure about this? Project Exodus. We had designed it years ago as a contingency plan, never thinking I'd actually need it. It was a complete extraction protocol for all systems and assets under my control. I'm sure, Jen, they made their choice. Initialize phase 1. Understood. I'll have legal prepare the documentation. This is going to cause quite a stir. I smiled grimly, and they wanted me to step away. I'm simply honoring their request. As I hung up, I looked around my office one more time. The awards on the wall, the letters of gratitude from family members I'd helped over the years, the photos of family gatherings where I'd quietly solved crisis after crisis in the background, all of it felt hollow now. They thought they were removing one difficult person who wouldn't approve Brad's ridiculous loan. They had no idea they were about to discover exactly how much of their financial lives I had been managing. The family fund was just the beginning. By tomorrow morning, they would understand that when you build your house on a foundation and then tell that foundation it's no longer needed, you shouldn't be surprised when everything comes crashing down. I opened my laptop again and began the process of stepping away. One by one, I initiated the shutdown sequences for every system I had built. It was time for my family to learn what they had so carelessly thrown away. The shrill sound of my phone pierced through the darkness at exactly 2:15 in the morning. I was already awake, sitting at my kitchen counter with a cup of chamomile tea waiting. The automation protocols I had initiated were precise scheduled to execute at 2 a.m. Eastern Time when all financial systems updated. By 2:15, the first wave of notifications would hit. I let the phone ring, watching as the screen lit up with call after call. Dad, Mom, Uncle Robert, Aunt Catherine, Brad. The numbers climbed rapidly. 5 calls, 10:20. Text messages poured in like a digital avalanche. I calmly sipped my tea and watched the storm I had created. After an hour, I finally listened to the first voicemail. Dad's voice was panicked, higher pitched than I'd ever heard it. Jacqueline, what happened? The bank called. They've flagged everything. The property management system is down. The automatic payments aren't processing, and they're saying we're in violation of our loan agreements. Call me back immediately. I typed a simple response to the group chat. I'm honoring your decision to have me step away. As requested, I've removed myself from all family financial matters. The kitchen was peaceful in the pre-dawn hours. Through the window, I could see the city slowly waking up, unaware of the family drama unfolding in the digital realm. My laptop showed a dashboard of systems, systematically shutting down each one, displaying a satisfying, disconnected status. The property management software was first. I had built it 7 years ago when the family inherited a portfolio of rental properties from great-aunt Edith. The system handled everything: tenant screening, rent collection, maintenance requests, tax documentation, even automatic coordination with our network of contractors. Without it, 12 properties across 3 states would need immediate manual management. Next went the tax optimization program. This beautiful piece of code had taken me 2 years to perfect. It tracked every possible deduction, organized receipts, calculated depreciation, and even generated ready-to-file forms for our accountant. Last year alone, it had identified overlooked deductions that saved the family over 200,000 dollars. The healthcare coordination system for Grandma was perhaps the most complex. At 91, she saw 8 different specialists, took 14 medications, and had standing appointments at 3 different medical facilities. My system coordinated everything: appointment scheduling, medication reminders, insurance, pre-authorizations, even transportation arrangements. Without it, managing her care would require a full-time employee. My phone buzzed with a call from my sister Sarah. Unlike the others, I answered this one. "Jacqueline, thank God," she whispered. "I'm in the bathroom at Mom and Dad's. It's chaos here. Brad just showed up with his laptop claiming he can fix everything, but he can't even log into the property management portal." "That's because there is no portal anymore, Sarah. I built those systems. They're my intellectual property. When I step away, they come with me." "But Jacqueline, Brad is telling everyone you sabotaged the family. He's talking about suing you for financial terrorism or something ridiculous. Dad's on the phone with lawyers." I laughed, surprising myself with how calm I felt. "Let him try. Every system has my name on the copyright. Every line of code is documented as my creation. I gave the family free use of my work. They voted to remove me, so I removed my work. It's that simple." "It's not simple," Sarah's voice rose slightly. "Grandma's medical alert just went off because the system didn't auto-confirm her morning medication. The tenants in the Ohio properties are calling because the maintenance portal is down. 3 mortgage payments failed to process. Mom is crying, Dad is yelling, and Brad is—" She paused. "Wait, Brad just said something about already having replacement systems ready. How could he have systems ready?" A chill ran down my spine. "Sarah, I need you to do something for me quietly. Go to Brad's laptop and see what he's actually doing." I heard shuffling, then a sharp intake of breath. "Jacqueline, he's not fixing anything. He's downloading files from our family cloud storage. Financial records, tenant information, tax documents. Why would he need all that?" The pieces clicked into place. Brad hadn't just orchestrated my removal to take control. He had bigger plans. "Sarah, listen carefully. Take photos of his screen with your phone. Document everything you see. And whatever you do, don't let him know you're watching." "Okay, but why? What's going on?" "I think Brad's planning something bigger than just taking over the family fund. Those documents contain sensitive information. Social security numbers, bank accounts, property deeds. In the wrong hands." "Oh my God, Jacqueline, he just opened a folder labeled Asset Transfer Templates. There are pre-filled forms here for transferring property ownership. They're dated next week." My blood ran cold. This wasn't just about control, it was about theft on a massive scale. "Sarah, get those photos and get out of there. Send them to my lawyer, Jennifer Patterson. Her contact is in your phone. Do it now." As Sarah hung up, my phone showed 89 missed calls and counting. The family group chat had exploded into a digital war zone. Accusations flew back and forth. Some blamed me for abandoning them. Others questioned Brad's motives. A few wondered how they had become so dependent on systems they didn't even know existed. I opened my laptop and pulled up the security logs from the past month. What I found made my stomach turn. Brad hadn't just been planning this takeover. He had been actively trying to hack into my systems for weeks. Failed login attempts, SQL injection attacks, even attempts to install keyloggers on family computers. How had I missed this? My phone rang again. This time it was Uncle Jerome, Martha's husband. His voice was tired but determined. Jacqueline, I need you to know I voted against removing you. I've watched you hold this family together for years while getting nothing but criticism in return. Martha and we're having problems because of this. She can't see past Brad's lies, but I can. Thank you, Uncle Jerome. That means more than you know. There's something else. I overheard Brad on the phone last week. He was talking to someone about liquidating assets once he had control, mentioned something about offshore accounts. I thought he was just bragging, but now, another piece of the puzzle. Uncle Jerome, would you be willing to provide that information to my lawyer? Already planning on it. Jacqueline, I know the family hurt you, but please, don't let Brad destroy everything. Some of us see the truth. After we hung up, I sat in the growing dawn light processing everything. The family's rejection had hurt, but discovering the depth of Brad's deception changed everything. This wasn't just about my pride or their ingratitude anymore. Brad was planning to pillage the family's assets, and they had handed him the keys to the kingdom. My laptop chimed with an encrypted message from Jennifer. Phase 1 complete. All systems successfully disconnected. Phase 2 awaiting authorization. Are you sure you want to proceed? Phase 2 would reveal the full extent of what I had built. Not just the visible systems, but the entire financial infrastructure I had created. The patents, the investments, the strategic partnerships. Things the family didn't even know existed, all legally under my company's control, but used for their benefit. I thought about Grandma, probably confused about why her medication reminder hadn't gone off. About the tenants who just wanted their maintenance requests handled. About my parents who, despite voting against me, didn't deserve to lose everything to Brad's scheme. But then I remembered the group message, the thumbs up, the years of being taken for granted, the secret meeting where they plotted my removal while I was working to secure their futures. I typed my response, proceed with phase 2. The sun was fully up now, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Somewhere across town, my family was in crisis mode, scrambling to understand how their carefully ordered financial world had collapsed overnight. They were about to learn that the person they voted to remove wasn't just a fund manager or a tech-savvy relative. I was the architect of their prosperity, and without me, they were about to discover just how fragile their house of cards really was. By 7 a.m., the missed calls had reached 143. I switched my phone to silent and prepared for the day ahead. Jennifer had asked me to come to our firm's office early. She'd assembled our legal team, and we needed to review everything before the inevitable confrontation. I dressed carefully in my best navy suit, the one I wore for major presentations. If my family wanted to treat this as a business matter, then I would approach it as the CEO I had become. The drive downtown was surreal, the rest of the world continuing as normal while my family's financial empire crumbled in real time. Our firm, Meridian Financial Technologies, occupied the top 3 floors of a modern glass building in the financial district. As I entered the conference room, I found Jennifer already there with our senior legal counsel, Marcus Washington, and 2 junior attorneys I recognized but hadn't worked with directly. Morning, Jacqueline. Jennifer greeted me, sliding a coffee across the table. Marcus has reviewed all the contracts and documentation. You're going to want to hear this. Marcus, a distinguished man in his 60s who had helped us navigate corporate law since our startup days, adjusted his glasses and opened a thick folder. Jacqueline, I've examined every agreement, every transfer of technology, every financial arrangement between you and your family members over the past 15 years. The legal situation is clear-cut. You own every piece of intellectual property, the software systems, the algorithms, the financial strategies. All of it is registered under your name or Meridian's corporate entity. What about the family's claim that I'm sabotaging them? He smiled slightly. They were using your property with your permission. You've revoked that permission. It's no different than lending someone your car and then asking for it back. The fact that they built their lives around having access to your car doesn't create any legal obligation for you to continue lending it. One of the junior attorneys, a sharp-eyed woman named Priya, added, We've also documented that you never received compensation for any of these systems. Fair market value for similar financial management software would be in the millions. You gave it freely, which actually strengthens your position. There's no contract they can point to requiring continued access. Jennifer pulled up a presentation on the wall screen. Now let's talk about what you actually built. I don't think even you fully appreciate the scope anymore. The presentation was staggering. Beyond the visible systems the family knew about, there was so much more. 14 patents for financial automation technologies, strategic partnerships with 3 major banks that preferred our systems, an investment portfolio worth $12 million, all legally under Meridian but managed for family benefit, licensing deals that generated passive income, all of which had been funneled back to family investments. A revolutionary healthcare management AI that major hospital systems were interested in acquiring. This is just what we could quantify quickly, Jennifer continued. The family thought they were voting to remove you from managing a shared fund. They have no idea they were benefiting from an entire financial technology empire you built. A knock at the conference room door interrupted us. Our receptionist looked flustered. Miss Meridian, there's a woman here demanding to see you. She says she's your mother. She doesn't have an appointment, but she's quite insistent. I sighed. Send her in. Let's get this over with. Mom burst through this door moments later, her usually perfect appearance disheveled. Her eyes were red from crying, and she clutched her designer purse like a lifeline. Jacqueline, how could you do this to us? Do you have any idea what you've caused? Your grandmother is confused. The tenants are threatening to break their leases, and the bank is saying we might be in default on several loans. Hello, Mom. Please have a seat. I don't want to sit. I want you to fix this. Stop this tantrum and turn everything back on. Marcus stepped forward. Mrs. Meridian, I'm Marcus Washington, legal counsel for your daughter's firm. I need to advise you that this meeting is being recorded for legal purposes. Mom's face went from flushed to pale. Legal purposes, Jacqueline, you're recording your own mother. You voted to remove me from family financial matters, I said calmly. This is now a business discussion. I'm happy to explain the situation, but I need you to understand where we stand. Jennifer activated another screen showing a timeline of my contributions. Mrs. Meridian, are you aware that your daughter has been working an average of 20 hours per week on family financial matters, unpaid for 15 years? At her current consulting rate, that represents over $4 million in unbilled hours. That's family. You don't bill family. Exactly, I interjected. I didn't bill family. I gave freely, and in return you held a secret meeting, voted me out, and gave control to Brad. Speaking of which, how's his management working out? Mom slumped into a chair, suddenly looking older than her 58 years. He said he could handle everything. He had presentations charts showing how he'd modernize our approach. But when the systems went down, he just kept saying, "You must have installed viruses or backdoors." He's at the house right now with 3 of his friends, all claiming to be computer experts. Priya leaned forward. Mrs. Meridian, we need to ask you something important. Has Brad had access to any family financial documents? Bank accounts, property, deeds, tax records? Well, yes. We gave him everything yesterday so he could start managing things. Why? The lawyers exchanged concerned looks. Marcus spoke carefully. We have reason to believe Brad may be planning something more serious than just taking over management. Has he asked you to sign anything? Mom's hand flew to her mouth. He brought some papers this morning, said they were standard forms to add him as a financial representative. Your father was about to sign them when I left to come here. I grabbed my phone and called Dad immediately. He answered on the first ring. Jacqueline, thank God, please, we need... Dad, listen carefully. Do not sign anything Brad gives you. Nothing. Not a single form. But he says it's just to... Dad, Brad is trying to steal everything. Do not sign anything. I'm sending our lawyers to the house now. Marcus was already on his phone dispatching someone from the firm. Mom looked between us, confusion and fear battling on her face. Steal? What do you mean steal his family? Jennifer pulled up the security logs I'd discovered earlier. These are hacking attempts on Jacqueline's systems over the past month. all traced to IP addresses associated with Brad. He's been trying to break in and steal the code. But more concerning, Priya added, pulling up Sarah's photos from earlier, are these documents your other daughter photographed on Brad's computer? Pre-filled asset transfer forms, offshore account applications, and what appears to be a plan to liquidate family properties. Mom stared at the evidence, her face crumbling. We believed him. He said Jacqueline was controlling, that she was building her own empire on our backs. He had examples times when she'd said no to requests, investments she wouldn't approve. Every investment I rejected was either a scam or high-risk speculation, I said quietly. I have the due diligence reports for all of them, including the $50,000 Brad wanted for Moon Lambo cryptocurrency, which the SEC shut down for fraud 2 days ago. The conference room fell silent. Mom sat there processing the magnitude of their mistake. Finally, she looked up at me with tears streaming down her face. We voted against our own daughter, the one person who was actually protecting us, and we handed everything to a thief. He's not just a thief, Mom. He's been planning this for years. The question now is whether you want my help stopping him. Yes, please, Jacqueline. I know we don't deserve it, but please help us. Marcus cleared his throat. If you want our help, we'll need complete cooperation. Full access to all family financial records, power of attorney to act on the family's behalf, and most importantly, a united front against Brad. Can you deliver that? Mom nodded frantically. Yes, whatever you need. Just please don't let him destroy everything you built for us. I stood up, looking down at my mother. The woman who had given birth to me, raised me, and then voted to cast me out based on lies and manipulation. I'll help, I said finally. Not because you deserve it after what you did, but because Grandma doesn't deserve to suffer for your mistakes. Because the tenants counting on us don't deserve to be displaced. Because despite everything, you're still my family. Mom broke down, completely sobbing apologies that felt both too late and somehow just in time. As she cried, my phone buzzed with a message from the attorney Marcus had sent to the house. Arrived just in time. Brad was pressuring your father to sign. Documents secured. You need to see what he was trying to get signed. This is bigger than we thought. I looked at Jennifer and Marcus. Suit up, everyone. We're going to war. The convoy of cars pulling up to Grandma's colonial house on Riverside Drive must have been quite a sight for the neighbors. My BMW led the pack, followed by Jennifer's Tesla, Marcus's Mercedes, and 2 additional vehicles carrying junior attorneys and forensic accountants. As we emerged, briefcases and laptops in hand, curtains twitched all along the quiet street. Brad's rusty pickup truck was already in the driveway, parked at an angle that blocked several other cars. A petty power play that told me everything about his current state of mind. Through the large front window, I could see the family gathered in Grandma's living room, voices raised in what appeared to be heated argument. Remember, Marcus said quietly as we approached the front door, stay calm, stick to facts, and let them hang themselves with their own words. We're recording everything legally under single-party consent laws. Jennifer squeezed my shoulder. You've got this, Jacqueline. Time to show them who they really tried to cast out. I didn't knock. This was still my grandmother's house, and I'd been coming here since childhood. The conversation stopped abruptly as we entered 23 family members turning to stare at our legal phalanx. Brad jumped to his feet immediately, his face flushed with anger. You've got some nerve showing up here. This is a private family meeting. Exactly, I replied coolly, setting my briefcase on Grandma's antique coffee table. And last I checked, despite your best efforts, I'm still family. The room was a study in contrasts. Brad's supporters, mostly his immediate family and a few cousins who owed him money, clustered on one side. On the other, I noticed Uncle Jerome, my sister Emma, who'd flown in from medical school, and surprisingly, my father, who looked like he'd aged 10 years overnight. But it was Grandma who commanded my attention. At 91, Helena Meridian was still sharp as a tack, despite what Brad had been telling everyone. She sat in her favorite wingback chair, wearing her best purple dress, the one she saved for important occasions. Her eyes met mine with a clarity that made me suspect she'd been playing possum for quite some time. "Jacqueline, dear," she said, her voice carrying the authority that had once run a successful real estate empire before women were supposed to do such things. "I believe you have some things to share with the family." "I do, Grandma, but first, I think Brad would like to explain his management strategy for the family assets." "Brad, it's been 18 hours since you took control. How's that going?" Brad's jaw clenched. "There would be no problems if you hadn't sabotaged everything you installed. Kill switches, viruses, probably illegal surveillance." Marcus stepped forward. "Mr. Davidson, I'm Marcus Washington, legal counsel for Meridian Financial Technologies. Are you formally accusing my client of criminal action? Because if so, I'd advise you to be very careful about defamation." "It's not defamation if it's true," Brad sputtered. "Then you won't mind if we examine your devices for evidence." Marcus produced a document. "This is a consent form for forensic analysis. If you're certain of criminal action, surely you'll want to help prove it." Brad backed down immediately. I need to consult with my own lawyer first." "Of course," Marcus smiled like a shark. "While you're doing that, perhaps we should discuss these." Jennifer connected her laptop to Grandma's smart TV, another system I'd installed and managed. The screen filled with the forged asset transfer documents our team had intercepted at my parents' house. "These documents," Priya explained to the stunned room, "would have transferred ownership of 12 family properties to a shell company registered in Delaware. The company, Meridian Legacy Holdings LLC, was formed 3 weeks ago. Care to guess who the sole owner is?" Uncle Robert, Brad's father, stood slowly. "That's impossible. Brad would never." The signature pages were pre-signed. Jennifer continued clicking through images, using what appears to be trace signatures from legitimate family documents. This one, for instance, matches Helena Meridian's signature from a birthday card she signed last month. We found the original card in Brad's truck. The room erupted. Accusations flew as Brad tried to deflect, claiming the documents were plants, that we'd fabricated everything. But his story crumbled when his own brother Marcus stood up. "I can't do this anymore," Marcus said, his voice shaking. He was younger than Brad by 5 years, quieter, the one who'd gone into teaching rather than chasing get-rich-quick schemes. "Brad, they're telling the truth. I know because you tried to get me to help forge Dad's signature last week. I refused, but I should have said something sooner." The shock on Robert's face was heartbreaking. "Marcus, what are you saying?" "I'm saying Brad's been planning this for years, Dad. He's in debt to some very bad people. 300,000 to a bookie in Atlantic City. Another 500,000 to investors in his last failed business. He saw the family trust as his way out." Brad lunged at his brother, but Uncle Jerome and 2 cousins restrained him. His mask finally slipped completely. "You sanctimonious little rat," Brad screamed at Marcus. "After everything I've done for this family, I deserve that money. I've been waiting. Playing nice. Kissing up to the old lady for years." "The old lady," Grandma said quietly, "can hear you perfectly well, Bradley." The room fell silent. Grandma rose from her chair with more grace than most people half her age could manage. She walked to the TV and studied the forged documents. "Priya, dear, could you show them the other thing, the recordings?" I blinked in surprise. "Recordings, Grandma." She smiled. "Jacqueline, you taught me to use that tablet, remember? Such a clever device. Did you know it can record conversations I've been documenting every family gathering for 2 years now? Started when Brad first suggested I might be getting too old to manage my affairs." Priya, quick on the uptake, accessed Grandma's cloud storage, another system I'd set up. Dozens of audio files appeared, all meticulously labeled with dates and participants. "Should we start with last Christmas?" Grandma suggested, when Brad and his father discussed having me declared incompetent. Or perhaps the conversation from Easter, where Brad outlined his plan to modernize the family holdings by liquidating everything. She selected a file from 6 months ago. Brad's voice filled the room. "The old bat won't last another year. Once she's gone or declared incompetent, we move fast. Jacqueline's the only real obstacle. Get her out of the picture and the rest of the family will follow whatever financial plan we present. There's sheep dad, Smart enough to make money, too stupid to manage it. Robert sank into a chair, his face ashen. My own son. There's more, Grandma continued relentlessly. Conversations where he discussed using family funds to pay off gambling debts. Plans to blame any losses on Jacqueline's mismanagement. Even discussions about which family members would be easiest to manipulate. Brad's support evaporated instantly. Cousins who'd backed him stepped away. Aunt Martha, who'd been so quick with her thumbs up, looked physically ill. But the coup de grace, Grandma said, selecting a file from just 2 weeks ago, is this conversation with someone named Tony the Hammer Torino. Brad went white. You can't play that. That's private. Privacy ended when you plotted to steal from your family, Grandma replied coldly. The recording was damning. Brad promising Tony that he'd have his money within the month. Tony making it clear what would happen if he didn't. Brad assuring him that once he had control of the family assets, payment would be immediate. 500,000 by month's end, Tony's gravelly voice stated, or we start with your kneecaps and work our way up. The family sat in stunned silence. This wasn't just greed or ambition. Brad had put everyone at risk, potentially exposing the family to violent criminals. I believe, Grandma said, returning to her chair, we need to vote again. All those in favor of Brad managing anything more complex than a lemonade stand. Not a single hand rose. Even Brad's parents kept their hands down, Robert openly weeping at what his son had become. And all those in favor of apologizing to Jacqueline and begging her to save us from this mess. Every hand shot up, including Brad's father and even Aunt Martha. Brad made one last desperate play. You can't do this. I'll sue. You'll be too busy dealing with federal charges, Marcus interrupted. Fraud, forgery, conspiracy to commit theft, RICO violations. If we can prove the gambling connection, you're looking at 15 to 20 years minimum. As if on cue, we heard sirens approaching. Jennifer had coordinated with law enforcement, timing their arrival perfectly. You called the cops on me, Brad screamed at me. Your own cousin. No, I replied calmly. You called them on yourself the moment you decided to prey on your own family. I'm just cleaning up the mess as usual. 2 FBI agents entered, having been briefed by our legal team. As they read Brad his rights and led him away in handcuffs, he kept screaming about betrayal, about family loyalty, about how he'd been wronged. The room remained silent long after the sirens faded. Finally, Dad spoke. Jacqueline, there aren't words. We threw you away for him. Our own daughter who'd done nothing but protect and provide for us. You did, I agreed simply. The question now is what happens next. Mom, who'd been quietly crying, looked up. Whatever you want, however you want to handle things going forward, we'll agree to anything. I don't want blind obedience, I said. That's how Brad manipulated you in the first place. What I want is transparency, accountability, and a family that actually functions like one. Emma, ever the peacemaker, stepped forward. What if we started over, not just with the finances, but with how we operate as a family? Jacqueline's protected us for years without recognition. Maybe it's time we learned to protect each other. Uncle Jerome nodded. My wife and I have already started that process. Martha's agreed to counseling to understand how she got so caught up in Brad's lies. Others might benefit from the same. I looked around the room at faces showing various stages of shame, regret, and hope. These people had hurt me deeply, had chosen a con artist's lies over 15 years of demonstrated loyalty. But they were also the people who'd shaped me, celebrated with me, been part of my life since birth. All right, I said finally, but we do this my way. Full financial transparency, professional oversight, regular family meetings that aren't about money, but about actually being a family. And mandatory financial literacy training for everyone. No more blind trust in anyone, including me. Especially you, Grandma added with a twinkle in her eye. Though I noticed you waited until after I'd recorded everything to teach me about cloud storage security. Despite everything, I laughed. You got me there, Grandma. As the family began discussing next steps, Jennifer pulled me aside. You know there's still more to reveal. The patents, The partnerships, the real value of what you've built. One crisis at a time, I murmured back. Let them digest Brad's betrayal first. Then we'll show them what they almost lost. The sun was setting through Grandma's lace curtains, painting the room in warm gold. The family that had gathered this morning in crisis was transforming into something new, scarred but wiser, humbled but hopeful. Brad was gone, but in his wake, he'd inadvertently given us a gift, the chance to rebuild on a foundation of truth rather than comfortable lies. It would take time, trust would need to be earned, and some relationships might never fully heal. But for the first time in years, I felt like I actually had a family again. Not just a collection of people I managed financial systems for, but real family, messy and complicated and worth fighting for. The next morning arrived with an unseasonable warmth for early March. I stood in the conference room of our law firm's offices looking out at the city skyline while Jennifer and Marcus prepared the presentation that would reshape my family's understanding of their financial reality. The previous day's revelations about Brad had been shocking enough. What came next would be transformational. Are you sure you want to reveal everything? Jennifer asked, arranging documents on the conference table. You could keep the full scope private, maintain some leverage. No more secrets, I replied. That's how we got into this mess. They need to understand exactly what they voted to throw away and what Brad was really trying to steal. Family members began arriving at 9, sharp, subdued, and respectful in a way I'd never seen before. Dad held the door for Mom, who carried a box of pastries from my favorite bakery, a small gesture that somehow meant everything. Emma helped Grandma to a seat at the head of the table, while Uncle Jerome and Aunt Martha sat quietly, their recent reconciliation evident in their clasped hands. Even Brad's parents were there. Robert looked like he'd been hollowed out from the inside, while Brad's mother Diane clutched a tissue box like a lifeline. Marcus, Brad's younger brother, who'd finally stood up to him, sat beside them offering quiet support. Thank you all for coming, I began once everyone was seated. Yesterday you learned about Brad's attempted theft. Today you need to understand what he was actually trying to steal. The family fund you thought you were voting on represents less than 2% of the total assets I've been managing. Confused glances ricocheted around the table. Aunt Catherine, our unofficial family accountant, frowned. 2%, but the fund has nearly $800,000. Correct, Jennifer said, activating the presentation screen, which means the total assets under Jacqueline's management exceed $40 million. The silence was so complete I could hear the hum of the air conditioning. Dad's coffee cup stopped halfway to his mouth. Mom's pastry dropped onto her plate. That's impossible, Uncle Robert managed. How could we have $40 million and not know it? Because, I explained, I built it quietly, systematically over 15 years. Every system I created generated value beyond its immediate function. Let me show you. The first slide showed a web of interconnected companies and holdings. Meridian Family Properties, LLC, Meridian Health Systems, Meridian Investment Partners. Each entity was created to maximize tax efficiency and protect family assets. But the real value came from what I built within each structure. Jennifer took over, her CEO instincts kicking in. Let's start with the property management system Jacqueline created. You thought it was just software to collect rent and schedule maintenance. In reality, she used predictive analytics to identify undervalued properties in emerging markets. Over 7 years, she acquired 16 additional properties using refinancing strategies and reinvested profits. The screen showed a map dotted with properties across 5 states. The 12 properties you knew about are worth roughly $3 million. The 16 you didn't know about, $15 million and climbing. But how, Mom whispered. We would have noticed purchases that large. No single purchase exceeded $200,000, I explained. I targeted distressed properties in areas with upcoming development, a condemned warehouse in Austin that's now in the center of a tech corridor, a flood-damaged apartment complex in Nashville that we renovated just before the city's population boom. Small strategic investments that flew under the radar. Marcus Washington pulled up legal documents. Every acquisition was completely legal and ethical. Jacqueline used a provision in the original family trust that allowed the fund manager to reinvest profits without board approval for amounts under $250,000. She never violated the trust terms. She just maximized them in ways no one else thought to. The next revelation hit even harder. The healthcare system managing Grandma's care, I continued, started as a simple coordination tool, but I realized we were solving a problem millions of families faced. So I patented the underlying technology and licensed it to 3 major hospital systems. Grandma leaned forward, eyes sharp. You turned my doctor appointments into a business. I turned our solution into something that helps thousands of elderly patients navigate complex healthcare, I clarified. The licensing fees, nearly $2 million annually, all went back into the family fund. It's been paying for everyone's health insurance for 5 years. The revelations kept coming. The tax optimization system had identified overlooked deductions going back decades, resulting in amended returns that brought in $3 million in refunds. The investment algorithm I'd written had turned the family's scattered stock holdings into a sophisticated portfolio that consistently beat market returns by 12%. But the crown jewel, Jennifer said, pulling up a patent filing, is the integrated family financial management system. Jacqueline essentially created a revolutionary approach to multi-generational wealth management. 3 of the largest banks in the country want to license it. Conservative estimates put the value at $20 million. Uncle Jerome raised his hand like a student in class. I'm sorry, but I need to understand something. Why didn't you tell us why build all this in secret? I'd expected this question. Remember what happened when I transparently refused Brad's loan request? I was labeled controlling and manipulative. Every time I tried to explain a complex financial strategy, eyes glazed over. The few times I mentioned potential opportunities, family members either wanted immediate payouts or accused me of showing off. So you just did it anyway? Aunt Martha asked, a note of awe creeping into her voice. I did what I've always done. Solved problems and maximized opportunities. The difference was I stopped asking for permission and recognition. I figured if the family benefited from the results, that was enough. Robert cleared his throat. Brad knew, didn't he? Somehow he found out about all this. We believe so, Marcus Washington confirmed. The FBI found evidence on his devices suggesting he'd been tracking Jacqueline's corporate filings for years. He knew about the patents, the property acquisitions, possibly even the licensing deals. His gambling debts just accelerated his timeline. $500,000 to a bookie, Robert said bitterly. He was willing to destroy $40 million in family wealth for $500,000. He was willing to destroy his family for $500,000. Diane corrected quietly. The money's just numbers. The betrayal, that's what can't be undone. Emma, who'd been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke. Jacqueline, I need to confess something. I knew about some of this, not the full scope, but I saw the property purchases when I was helping with tax prep 2 years ago. You asked me not to mention it, said you were waiting for the right time. I remember, I said. You kept my confidence even when the family turned against me. That loyalty means everything. Dad set down his coffee cup with shaking hands. We voted to remove you. We actually voted to cast out the person who'd built us a fortune, protected us from predators, and never asked for a penny in return. How do we come back from that? By learning from it, Grandma said firmly. By recognizing that wisdom isn't about age or volume, but about actions and results. By rebuilding our family on merit rather than politics. Jennifer clicked to the next slide, which brings us to the future. Jacqueline has a proposal for restructuring the family's financial governance. I stood looking at each family member in turn. The old system failed because it was built on blind trust and informal agreements. Brad exploited both. Going forward, I propose creating the Meridian Family Trust 2.0, a revolutionary model that other wealthy families are already asking to license. The structure I outlined was comprehensive. professional board members alongside family representatives, transparent reporting accessible to all beneficiaries, educational requirements for anyone wanting to participate in management, built-in protections against manipulation and fraud. Most importantly, I continued, it separates family relationships from financial management. No more secret meetings about money. No more using funds as leverage in personal disputes. The trust operates independently while the family focuses on being a family. Would you still manage it? Mom asked hesitantly. I'll architect it and serve on the board, but day-to-day management would be handled by professionals. I've spent 15 years being your unofficial CFO. I'd like to try just being your daughter and cousin for a while. Aunt Catherine raised her hand. What about access? Brad's not the only one with financial pressures. Marcus Washington distributed a detailed document. The new trust structure includes provisions for education, healthcare, emergency support, and small business investments. But every distribution would be transparent, documented, and require multiple approvals. No more informal loans or secret arrangements. And Brad, Robert asked painfully, what happens to his share? Legally, his criminal actions allow for his disinheritance, Marcus explained. However, Jacqueline has suggested a different approach. I nodded. Brad's children are innocent. His share would go into trust for them, accessible only for education and healthcare until they're 30, with mandatory financial literacy training before any distributions. They shouldn't suffer for their father's crimes. Robert's eyes filled with tears. That's more generous than we deserve. It's not about what anyone deserves, I said. It's about breaking cycles. Brad learned entitlement and manipulation somewhere. His kids deserve a chance to learn differently. The room fell silent as family members absorbed the magnitude of what they'd almost lost. $40 million was staggering, but the systematic protection growth and innovation I'd provided were priceless. Brad hadn't just tried to steal money. He'd tried to destroy a carefully crafted legacy. I have one more revelation, I said, my voice softer now. The real reason I worked so hard to build this wealth wasn't for recognition or control. It was because I remembered Grandpa. Several family members shifted uncomfortably. Grandpa's bankruptcy and subsequent death had been the family's great shame rarely discussed. I was 17 when we lost everything, I continued. I watched him age 10 years and 6 months, saw the light go out of his eyes when the bank took his store. He died thinking he'd failed us. I swore that night I'd never let this family face that kind of loss again. And you kept that promise, Grandma said, tears streaming down her face. My Harold would have been so proud. You didn't just save us financially, Jacqueline. You saved us from ourselves. Mom stood suddenly walking around the table to where I sat. Without warning, she pulled me into a fierce hug. I'm so sorry, she whispered, not just for the vote, but for years of taking you for granted, for seeing your strength as a threat instead of the gift it was. One by one, family members rose to offer apologies, thanks, and promises to do better. Even Aunt Martha, who'd been so quick with her dismissive thumbs up, approached with genuine humility. I've been jealous of you for years, she admitted quietly. You're everything I wished I could be. Smart, successful, independent. Instead of celebrating that I let Brad convince me you were the enemy. Can you forgive me? We're family, I said simply. We forgive. We learn, we move forward. As the meeting wound down, Jennifer pulled up one final slide. There's one last piece of business. Several major investment firms have approached us about taking the Meridian Family Trust model national. We could help thousands of families protect their wealth from internal threats like Brad. Jacqueline would maintain ownership and receive significant royalties, but the impact could be transformational. Do it, Grandma said immediately. Turn our pain into purpose. If other families can avoid what we've been through, that's worth more than any dollar amount. The family voted unanimously to support the initiative. As we concluded the meeting, I realized something had fundamentally shifted. We were no longer just relatives bound by blood and old money. We were partners in something bigger, a legacy built on transparency, protection, and the hard-won wisdom that sometimes the greatest threat to a family comes from within. Brad had tried to steal $40 million. Instead, he'd inadvertently given us something worth far more, the chance to rebuild stronger, wiser, and more united than ever before. The secret fortune was no longer secret, but in bringing it into the light, we discovered that the real treasure had always been the potential for growth, forgiveness, and genuine connection. The fortune I'd built in shadows could finally flourish in the sun. 3 days after the revelation of our family's hidden fortune, Emma called me at 6 in the morning. Her voice was different, not the usual cheerful medical student checking in, but something raw and urgent. "Jacqueline, I need to see you alone. Can you meet me at the coffee shop on 5th Street in an hour?" "Of course, Emma, what's wrong?" "Just please come, and don't tell anyone else. Not yet." The morning was crisp fog rolling off the river as I drove to our meeting spot, a small cafe we'd frequented during her undergrad years. Emma was already there, hunched over a cup of tea in the back corner booth. Her medical school sweatshirt was inside out, her usually perfect ponytail askew. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. I slid into the booth across from her. "Talk to me." She looked up and I saw tears threatening to spill. "I've been carrying something for 2 years. With everything that's happened with Brad, with the family finally seeing truth, I can't keep quiet anymore." My stomach tightened. "Whatever it is, we'll handle it together." Emma pulled out her phone, scrolling to a folder labeled Evidence. Her hands shook as she showed me the first image, a screenshot of text messages. Brad started texting me during my junior year. At first, it was innocent. Congratulations on grades, asking about medical school applications. Then it changed. I read the messages, my blood running cold. Brad's texts grew progressively inappropriate, commenting on Emma's appearance, making suggestive remarks about celebrating her achievements together. Emma's responses were clearly uncomfortable, trying to deflect while remaining polite. "Why didn't you tell me then?" I asked gently. "Because of this." She swiped to the next image. Another message from Brad. He said if I told anyone, he'd convince the family I was trying to seduce him for money. That as fund manager, he could make my tuition payments complicated. I was 20 years old, Jacqueline. I didn't know what to do. The messages got worse. Brad describing what he wanted to do to her, sending photos that were carefully cropped to seem innocent if shown out of context, but clearly meant to intimidate. Emma documenting each interaction with timestamps and notes. Then came Christmas 2 years ago. Emma continued, her voice barely a whisper. The family party at Grandma's. I tried to stay near other people, but he cornered me in the kitchen while everyone was watching football. She showed me photos she'd taken of bruises on her upper arm, the marks clearly from someone grabbing her. He pressed me against the counter, said it was time to stop playing hard to get, said medical school was expensive and he could make it easier or harder for me. "Emma," I reached for her hand. "I need him," she said with a flash of her old fire. "Hard. Told him I'd scream if he touched me again." He backed off, but the look in his eyes. I knew it wasn't over. What happened next? I tried to tell Mom and Dad, showed them some of the tamer messages. Dad said I was misinterpreting friendly concern. Mom said Brad was just socially awkward and I should be flattered by the attention. They warned me not to cause drama in the family. My hands clenched into fists. They knew. They knew enough. Then Brad got smarter. The messages stopped, but the behavior didn't. He'd find ways to touch me at family gatherings. A hand on my lower back, standing too close, accidental brushes. Always when no one was looking, always deniable. Emma pulled up an email dated 6 months ago. This is when I finally fought back. I told him I had evidence and would go public if he didn't stop. His response? The email from Brad was professionally written but chilling. "Dear Emma, I'm concerned about your recent hostility toward me. As family fund manager, I've noticed some discrepancies in your tuition disbursements that require investigation. I hope we can resolve this matter privately without involving the full family board. Brad." He was threatening to cut off my medical school funding, Emma said, but I kept everything. Every message, every photo, every incident logged with dates and witnesses when possible. She paused, looking embarrassed. I recorded some of our conversations at family gatherings. She played an audio file from last Thanksgiving. Brad's voice, slightly slurred from wine, saying, "You're looking good, Emma. Medical school must include gym time. Maybe you can give me a private anatomy lesson sometime." "I'm going to kill him," I said flatly. "No." Emma grabbed my hand. "That's not why I'm telling you this. With Brad arrested, with the family finally seeing who he really is, I want them to know all of it. The financial crimes are terrible, but what he did to me, what our parents enabled, that's the real cancer in this family." "You want to tell everyone?" "I need to, but I'm scared, Jacqueline. What if they don't believe me? What if they think I'm just piling on now that he's already in trouble?" "They'll believe you," I said firmly. "And if anyone has doubts, the evidence speaks for itself." "But Emma, are you prepared for how painful this might be? For Mom and Dad especially?" She nodded slowly. "They chose to protect family image over their daughter's safety. They need to face that. We can't heal if we keep burying truths." "When do you want to do this?" "Today? I know there's a family meeting scheduled to discuss the new trust structure. I want to address it then with everyone present, including Brad's parents. They deserve to know what their son really is." I studied my sister, brilliant, brave Emma, who'd carried this burden while excelling in medical school, while supporting me during the family vote, while maintaining her grace under unbearable pressure. "I'll be right beside you," I promised. "And Emma, I'm proud of you. This takes incredible courage." "I learned from watching you," she said, managing a small smile. "You taught me that protecting families sometimes means exposing uncomfortable truths." We spent the next 2 hours preparing. I called Marcus Washington to ensure legal protections were in place. Emma organized her evidence chronologically, creating a presentation that was both damning and irrefutable. By the time we arrived at the conference room, word had somehow spread that Emma had something important to share. The family assembled with curious but wary expressions. The recent revelations had left everyone raw, uncertain what new shock might emerge. Brad's parents, Robert and Diane, looked particularly fragile. Before we discussed the trust structure, Emma began standing at the head of the table. "I need to share something. It's about Brad, and why his removal from this family is about more than just financial crimes." She started from the beginning, her voice steady, despite the trembling in her hands. The room's atmosphere shifted from curiosity to horror as she detailed 2 years of harassment, showing messages and photos on the screen. Several aunts gasped at the explicit nature of Brad's texts. Uncle Jerome's face darkened with each revelation. When Emma reached the part about approaching our parents, Mom went pale. "Emma, I thought you were exaggerating. Brad said you'd misunderstood his mentoring." "Mentoring?" Emma's composure cracked. "He described what he wanted to do to my body, Mom. He grabbed me hard enough to leave bruises. How is that mentoring?" Dad looked sick. "We should have listened. God, Emma, we should have protected you." "Yes," Emma said simply. "You should have." The audio recordings were the final straw. Hearing Brad's predatory comments in his own voice, the casual way he'd objectified Emma at family gatherings while everyone laughed and chatted nearby, broke something in the room. Robert stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. For a moment, I thought he might defend his son. Instead, he walked around the table to where Emma stood. "I failed you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "As Brad's father, as your uncle, as a human being. There's no excuse. No justification. My son is a predator, and I enabled him by being blind to who he really was." Diane was sobbing openly. The signs were there. His entitlement, his anger, when women rejected him the way he talked about female colleagues. We made excuses, said boys will be boys, told ourselves he'd grow out of it. "He didn't grow out of it," Emma said quietly. "He grew into it. And the family's silence gave him permission." Grandma, who'd been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke. "Emma, dear, show them the last folder, the one labeled Not Alone." Emma looked surprised but opened the folder. Inside were screenshots from 3 other young women in our extended family, cousins and family friends who'd experienced similar harassment from Brad over the years. Each had confided in Grandma, who'd kept their secrets while trying to protect them at gatherings. You knew, Aunt Catherine asked Grandma, shocked. I suspected then. I knew, Grandma confirmed. But these young women were terrified of not being believed, of being blamed, of causing family strife. So I did what I could. Kept Brad away from them at gatherings, made sure they were never alone with him. It wasn't enough. Why didn't you stop him? Marcus, Brad's brother, asked painfully. Because this family has always been better at keeping secrets than confronting truth, Grandma said sharply. Because every time someone tried to raise concerns about Brad, they were shut down as troublemakers. I'm 91 years old. Who would have listened to an old woman's suspicions against the Golden Boy fund manager? The weight of collective failure settled over the room. Parents who dismissed concerns, relatives who'd ignored red flags, a system that protected the predator over the vulnerable. I need to say something, Mom said suddenly, standing on shaky legs. Emma, I failed you in the worst way a mother can fail. I put family reputation above your safety. I chose comfortable lies over difficult truths. There's no forgiveness for that, but I need you to know. I believe you. I'm sorry, and I will spend the rest of my life making sure no one in this family is ever silenced again. One by one, family members apologized. Not the hollow, sorry you were hurt, non-apologies, but real acknowledgement of their complicity. Some admitted to seeing warning signs and staying quiet. Others recognized how their dismissal of women's concerns had created an environment where Brad could operate freely. What happens now? Emma asked. Beyond apologies? Marcus Washington cleared his throat. We add these crimes to the federal charges against Brad. Sexual harassment, assault, extortion. With your evidence, he's looking at additional years in prison. But more importantly, I added, we change how this family operates. No more boys' clubs, no more dismissing women's concerns, no more protecting reputation over people. Jennifer pulled up a new slide. The Meridian Family Trust 2.0 will include mandatory reporting mechanisms for harassment independent investigators for any complaints and zero-tolerance policies. We're also suggesting mandatory training on recognizing and preventing predatory behavior. It's not enough, Emma said, but it's a start. Uncle Jerome stood next. I want to share something. My daughter, your cousin Patricia, left the family 5 years ago. We told everyone she got a job overseas, but the truth is she cut contact because of Brad. He propositioned her at her college graduation party. When she told me I confronted Brad privately, he laughed, said it was a misunderstanding, and I let it go. I chose family peace over my daughter's truth. I haven't seen Patricia in 5 years because I failed her. The revelations continued. Other family members shared moments they'd dismissed, concerns they'd buried, truths they'd avoided. Brad's predatory behavior hadn't existed in a vacuum. It had thrived in a culture of silence and complicity. We need professional help, Aunt Martha said quietly. Not just financial advisors and lawyers, but therapists who specialize in family trauma. We need to understand how we became people who would protect an abuser over his victims. Agreed, I said. I'll arrange for family counseling services. Participation is voluntary, but strongly encouraged. We can't build a healthy future on a poison foundation. Emma, still standing at the head of the table, looked exhausted, but somehow lighter. I want to be clear about something. I'm not sharing this for sympathy or revenge. I'm sharing it because silence is what allowed Brad to hurt me and others. If this family is going to heal, we need radical honesty. What do you need from us? Robert asked Emma directly. Beyond apologies and policy changes, what do you need to heal? Emma considered the question. I need to know that my voice matters, that the next time someone in this family says they're uncomfortable or scared or hurt, they'll be heard immediately. Not dismissed, not silenced, not told to keep the peace. Heard and protected. You have my word, Grandma said firmly, and if anyone in this family fails that test again, they'll answer to me. I may be old, but I've got years of silence to make up for. As the meeting continued, focusing on concrete steps to prevent future predation and support survivors, I watched my sister with deep admiration. She'd taken her pain and transformed it into purpose, her trauma into truth-telling. Brad had thought he could steal our money and manipulate our family, but Emma had done something far more powerful. She'd exposed the diseased culture that had allowed him to flourish. In bringing her story to light, she'd given us the chance to excise not just one predator, but the system that had protected him. The prodigal daughter hadn't squandered an inheritance and returned seeking forgiveness. She'd preserved evidence and returned demanding justice. And in doing so, she'd saved us all from continuing to be the kind of family that sacrifices its most vulnerable members on the altar of false harmony. One more thing, Emma said as the meeting concluded. I'm establishing a foundation with my portion of the trust. It'll provide legal and therapeutic support for harassment survivors who can't afford to fight back. I want Brad's legacy to be the protection of every person he tried to victimize. The family voted unanimously to match her initial funding. As we left the conference room, each member carrying the weight of hard truths and firm commitments, I realized that Emma had given us all an invaluable gift. She'd shown us that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's speaking truth despite trembling hands, and that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your family is refuse to let them remain comfortable in their complicity. The family fortune I'd protected paled in comparison to the integrity Emma had preserved. Money could be rebuilt, but the chance to choose truth over comfort, that opportunity once passed rarely comes again. We'd almost lost everything to Brad's greed, but Emma had saved us from something worse, remaining the kind of family that would let it happen again. The pounding on my apartment door at 11:47 that night wasn't entirely unexpected. After Emma's revelations and the family's collective reckoning, I'd been waiting for the other shoe to drop. What I hadn't expected was for that shoe to be worn by my father. I opened the door to find Dad looking more disheveled than I'd ever seen him. His usually crisp shirt was wrinkled, his silver hair uncombed, and his eyes carried the weight of sleepless nights. He clutched a manila folder like a lifeline. "Jacqueline, I need to talk to you. Please." I stepped aside, letting him into my minimalist living room. The contrast between us had never been starker. Him in his rumpled business casual, me in yoga pants and an old college sweatshirt, somehow still the more composed one. "Coffee," I offered, already moving toward the kitchen. "You look like you need it. Something stronger if you have it." I poured 2 glasses of the good scotch, the 21-year-old Balvenie I'd been saving for special occasions. This felt like it qualified, though I wasn't sure if we were celebrating or mourning. Dad took a large sip, then set the folder on my coffee table with trembling hands. "I've been carrying this for 3 years. After today, after seeing Emma's courage and your strength, I can't be a coward anymore." "Dad, what is this about?" He laughed bitterly. "It's about how Brad didn't choose me randomly, how he knew exactly which pressure points to push because I gave him the ammunition." I sat across from him waiting. I'd learned that silence often drew out more truth than questions. 3 years ago, I made a mistake. A series of mistakes, actually. The company was struggling. You remember when Morrison Industries was going through layoffs? I nodded. Dad had worked for Morrison for 25 years, climbing from sales to regional vice president. "What you don't know is that I was embezzling. Nothing major," he added quickly, seeing my expression. "Just padding expense reports, charging personal trips as business, inflating client entertainment costs. Maybe 40,000 total over 18 months. The scotch burned in my throat. "Dad, I know it was wrong, but your mother's shopping had gotten out of control. We had the country club fees, the boat payments, and I was too proud to admit we were living beyond our means. Too proud to ask for help from the family fund I saw you managing so brilliantly." He opened the folder, revealing expense reports, credit card statements, and what looked like internal Morrison Industries audit documents. I thought I was clever spreading it out, keeping each incident small, but Brad found out. God knows how, probably through his network of shady connections. He showed up at my office one day with copies of everything. "He blackmailed you," I said, the pieces clicking into place. That's why you voted against me, why you supported him taking over." Dad nodded miserably. He said he'd expose me if I didn't support him. Not just to the family, but to Morrison. I'd lose my job, my reputation, probably face criminal charges. 25 years of building a career gone. So I caved. I convinced your mother you were getting too controlling. I voted against my own daughter to save my skin. The room felt smaller suddenly, the weight of his confession pressing down on us both. I thought about all the times I'd wondered why my parents had turned against me so easily, why they'd believed Brad's lies without question. "There's more," Dad continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "Brad didn't just want my vote. He wanted information. Access codes to the family systems, details about property holdings, investment strategies. I gave him everything he asked for. That's how he knew about the hidden assets, I realized. You had partial access from when you helped with tax preparation. I betrayed you in every possible way," Dad said, tears now flowing freely. "My brilliant, loyal daughter who'd done nothing but protect and provide for this family, and I sold you out to protect myself from the consequences of my own greed." I stood and walked to the window, needing distance to process. The city lights blurred as I fought my own tears, not just of hurt, but of profound disappointment. The father I'd looked up to, whose approval I'd spent years seeking, had been living a lie. "But that's not the worst part," Dad said behind me. "Brad got greedy. Last month he demanded I forge your signature on documents, said if I didn't, he'd release everything anyway. That's when I realized I'd traded one blackmailer for another, except Brad was far more dangerous." I turned back to him. "What documents?" "Transfer papers for the patent holdings. He'd discovered your innovation somehow and wanted to move them to shell companies before taking over the fund. I refused. That's when he shifted tactics, started the campaign to remove you through family vote instead." "Did you forge my signature?" "No, that was my line in the sand. Too little, too late, but I couldn't steal from you directly. Brad was furious, said I was useless, that he'd destroy me along with you." I sat back down, studying my father. At 59, he looked 70. The weight of his deception had aged him, carved lines of guilt into his face. "Why tell me now?" "Because Emma stood up there today and showed us what real courage looks like. A 24-year-old medical student had more integrity than I've shown in my entire life. Because I watched you systematically save this family while we conspired against you. Because I can't live with this anymore." "What about Morrison, your job?" He laughed humorlessly. "I resigned yesterday. Told them about the embezzlement, offered to pay full restitution. They're considering whether to press charges. Either way, my career is over. Your mother doesn't know yet. I wanted to tell you first." "Dad," I started, then stopped. What was there to say that I forgave him? I wasn't there yet. That I understood, I didn't. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said, reading my silence correctly. "I just needed you to know the truth. And I'll testify to all of this if it helps build the case against Brad. He kept records of our communications. The FBI will find them. I'll face whatever consequences come. Have you calculated the full amount what you took? $43,618. I've already liquidated my retirement account to pay Morrison back. The boat, the country club membership, the vacation home, it's all going up for sale. Your mother will be devastated, but she needs to know the man she married is a thief and a coward." I noticed he'd said is, not was. Present tense. He wasn't distancing himself from his actions. "What do you want from me, Dad?" "Nothing. I have no right to want anything from you. I needed you to hear it from me, not from the FBI or the lawyers or the family gossip mill. You deserve that much at least." We sat in silence for several minutes. The Scotch bottle stood between us untouched after our initial drinks. Finally, I spoke. "I built everything to prevent another grandpa situation. To make sure no one in our family would face financial ruin and despair. I never imagined the threat would come from within. First Brad, now you." "I'm nothing like Brad," Dad said quickly. "Aren't you? You stole money. You betrayed family trust. You chose self-preservation over integrity. The only difference is scale and that you're showing remorse now that you've been caught. The words hit him like physical blows, each one true, each one necessary. You're right, he whispered. I'm exactly like him, just with better packaging and limits to my evil. God, Jacqueline, how did I become this person? One compromise at a time, I said. One justified expense report, one padded receipt, one vote against your daughter. Evil rarely announces itself, Dad. It creeps in through small surrenders. Can I ask you something? He said after another long pause. How did you resist it? The temptation, you had access to millions, complete control, endless opportunities to skim or redirect funds. How did you stay honest? I considered the question. Grandpa, every time I looked at a financial decision, I pictured his face when the bank took his store. I remembered my promise that night, that I'd protect this family. You can't protect something by stealing from it. You can't build trust through deception. I've destroyed your trust in me. Yes, I said simply. You have. Trust takes years to build and seconds to shatter. You've shattered it completely. Is there any way back? I don't know. Confession is a start, but it's just that. A start. You'll need to face the legal consequences, make full restitution, and then spend years proving this was an aberration, not your character. Even then, I'll always wonder if you're being honest or just better at hiding. Dad aged another year before my eyes. I understand. I'll do whatever it takes for however long it takes. Even if you never trust me again, I need to become someone worthy of trust. Mom needs to know tonight, I said firmly. She's been living in a fantasy funded by theft, and the family needs full disclosure at tomorrow's meeting. No spinning, no minimizing, no excuse making. Complete truth. I'll tell her as soon as I leave here. I'll also need all your records, every transaction, every communication with Brad, every compromised access code. My security team needs to know exactly what was breached. He pushed the folder toward me. Everything's here. Passwords, dates, amounts. I've been compiling it for days, making sure nothing was missed. I stood, signaling the conversation was ending. Dad rose slowly, looking older than Grandma, despite being 32 years younger. At the door, he turned back. Jacqueline, I know I have no right to be proud of you, but I am. You became everything I pretended to be. Successful, honest, protective of family. You're the person I should have been. I became who I am partly because of you, I said. The good parts you showed me in childhood before the compromise started. Maybe you can find that person again. I'll try. That's all I can promise, that I'll try. After he left, I sat alone in my apartment, the folder of evidence heavy in my hands. Tomorrow would bring fresh chaos, Mom's reaction, the family's response, the legal implications. But tonight I allowed myself to grieve the father I thought I'd known, the relationship we'd had, the trust that might never return. Brad had been a clear enemy, his evil obvious once exposed. But Dad represented something more insidious. The gradual corruption of a good man, the slow poison of small compromises. He was a reminder that the greatest threats often come not from those who set out to do evil, but from those who surrender their integrity, one justified exception at a time. I poured the scotch down the sink. The special occasion I'd been saving it for had turned out to be a funeral, the death of my illusions about the man who'd raised me. Tomorrow, we'd begin building something new on the ashes of what we'd lost. But tonight I mourned. For the father I thought I had, for the trust Brad had exploited, for the family we might have been if everyone had chosen courage over comfort just a little sooner. The city lights blurred again as tears finally came. Even architects of fortunes, I realized, sometimes had to watch their emotional foundations crumble before they could build anything lasting and true. The war room we'd established at Meridian Financial Technologies looked like something out of a high-stakes thriller. Multiple screens displayed financial records, legal documents, and evidence trails. My core team had worked through the night. Jennifer coordinating with law enforcement, Marcus Washington preparing legal strategies, and our cybersecurity expert David Chen tracing Brad's digital footprints. "We've got him," David announced at 6 a.m., pulling up a complex web of transactions on the main screen. Brad wasn't just planning to steal family assets, he's been part of a larger criminal network for years. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Jennifer leaned forward, studying the data. "Are you saying this goes beyond our family?" "Way beyond," David confirmed. "Remember those gambling debts to Tony, the Hammer Torino? That was just the tip. Brad's been feeding insider information from multiple wealthy families to a organized crime syndicate. Property valuations, investment strategies, trust structures, anything that could be exploited." Marcus Washington immediately saw the legal ramifications. "Rico, this isn't just fraud anymore. It's racketeering. The FBI will want everything we have." "They'll get it," I said, "but first we protect our family. David, what's our exposure?" He pulled up another screen showing compromised systems. "Thanks to your father's confession last night, we've identified every access point Brad exploited. I've already patched the vulnerabilities and implemented new security protocols, but there's something else you need to see." The next display showed a list of families, all prominent names in our state's business community. Brad's been shopping information from at least 12 other families: the Richardsons, the Patel Trust, the O'Brien Foundation. He had files on all of them. "My God," Jennifer breathed. "He was building a catalog for his criminal associates." "Which means," I said slowly, "we have an opportunity, not just to stop Brad, but to dismantle an entire predatory network. But we need to move fast and smart." I stood energized by the clarity of purpose. "Jennifer, contact each of these families. Warn them about the breach and offer our security services pro bono. Marcus, coordinate with the FBI and state attorney. I want Brad and his associates facing maximum charges. David, document everything, every transaction, every communication, every digital fingerprint." "What about the family meeting this morning?" Jennifer asked. "Your father's confession, the new trust structure." "We proceed as planned, but with additions. The family needs to understand they weren't just victims of Brad's greed. They were almost casualties of organized crime." The next 3 hours blurred together: phone calls to federal prosecutors, emergency meetings with affected families, cybersecurity protocols implemented across dozens of systems. By 9 a.m., when the family gathered in our conference room, we'd assembled a case that would reshape the state's approach to financial crime. Dad was already there when I arrived, sitting beside Mom, who looked like she'd been crying for hours. The story of his embezzlement had clearly been shared, adding another layer of pain to our family's upheaval. Other relatives filed in quietly, the atmosphere heavy with accumulated revelations. "Before we begin," I said, standing at the head of the table, "you need to understand that what happened to our family is part of something much larger." Brad wasn't acting alone. The screens around the room lit up with evidence. Criminal networks, compromised families, the systematic targeting of generational wealth. Gasps echoed as family members recognized names: business partners, country club friends, fellow prominent families, all marked as targets. "Brad fed our information to organized crime," I continued. "Every financial detail, every vulnerability, every family conflict that could be exploited. We weren't just betrayed by a greedy cousin. We were being packaged and sold to the highest bidder." Robert, Brad's father, looked physically ill. My son was working with the mob." "For at least 3 years, Marcus Washington confirmed. "The FBI raid this morning recovered extensive documentation. Brad kept meticulous records, probably for insurance against his criminal partners. Those records are now evidence in what's becoming a landmark racketeering case." "This morning?" Aunt Martha asked. "What raid?" Jennifer pulled up news footage. "Coordinated raids across 4 states, 17 arrests so far, including Tony Torino and several of his associates. Brad's already been transferred to federal custody and charged with additional counts of racketeering, conspiracy, and cyber terrorism." The family sat in stunned silence, processing the magnitude of Brad's betrayal. Then Uncle Jerome spoke up. "What about the other families, the ones Brad targeted?" "We've reached out to all of them," I said. offered our security services, and shared what information we legally could. The Patel family was days away from a major acquisition that Brad's intel would have sabotaged. The Richardson Trust was about to be restructured in a way that would have exposed millions to theft. "You saved them," Emma said quietly, "just like you saved us." "We saved them," I corrected. "Dad's confession gave us the access codes to trace Brad's network." Emma's courage in speaking up established the pattern of predation. Grandma's recordings provided crucial evidence. Even this family's pain contributed to stopping a massive criminal enterprise. Marcus Washington distributed thick legal folders. Which brings us to the future. The Meridian Family Trust 2.0 isn't just about protecting our wealth anymore. It's about creating a model that other families can use to protect themselves from similar threats. The structure we outlined went beyond anything currently in practice. Blockchain-based transaction tracking, AI-powered anomaly detection, mandatory background checks for anyone with financial access, and regular third-party audits. But the most revolutionary aspect was the transparency. Every transaction visible to every adult beneficiary, I explained. No more secret dealings, no more information silos. Brad thrived in darkness. We're choosing radical light. "What about privacy?" Aunt Catherine asked. "Privacy is maintained for personal spending," Jennifer clarified, "but family trust transactions completely transparent. If someone's uncomfortable with family members seeing their financial decisions, they probably shouldn't be managing family money." Dad raised his hand like a school child. "What about people like me who've compromised family trust?" I'd been expecting this question. "Full disclosure is required. Your embezzlement, the blackmail, your cooperation with authorities. It all becomes part of the family record, not as punishment, but as education. Future generations need to understand how good people can go wrong." "And consequences?" Mom asked quietly. "Restitution, obviously. Dad's already repaid Morrison Industries. He'll also forfeit his share of family distributions until the $43,000 is repaid to the trust. More importantly, he's barred from any financial management role for a minimum of 10 years pending comprehensive ethics training and family vote." Dad nodded, accepting the terms without protest. "More than fair. Honestly, more generous than I deserve." "Redemption should be possible," Grandma said firmly, "but it must be earned, not assumed." The vote on the new trust structure was unanimous. Even Dad voted for his own restrictions, understanding that accountability was the first step toward redemption. But as the family began to see hope in our new direction, I knew we weren't done. "There's one more piece," I announced. "The Meridian Institute for Financial Protection. We're establishing a nonprofit to help families identify and prevent internal threats. Brad's victims, including Emma, will serve on the board. We're turning our pain into prevention." "How much?" Robert asked quietly. He'd been silent through most of the meeting, the weight of his son's crimes crushing him. $5 million to start, funded by the fees we're earning from securing the other families Brad targeted. Every dollar Brad tried to steal will go toward preventing future victims. "I want to contribute," Robert said suddenly. "Diane and I have decided to liquidate our vacation properties. Brad grew up entitled partly because we gave him everything without teaching him values. Let our assets help prevent other Brads." Others began pledging contributions. Even families with modest means wanted to be part of building something positive from the wreckage. The Institute would offer free assessments for families' education programs on financial literacy and ethics, and support services for those discovering internal threats. "We're also creating the Emma Meridian Center," I added, looking at my sister, "specifically focused on preventing and addressing harassment within family businesses. Because financial crimes and personal predation often go hand in hand, as we've painfully learned." Emma wiped away tears. "You didn't have to name it after me." "Yes, we did. You showed us that protecting family wealth means nothing if we don't protect family members. The center will ensure no one suffers in silence again." As the meeting progressed, something remarkable happened. The family that had entered broken and suspicious began to transform. Ideas flowed freely. Uncle Jerome suggested partnering with law schools to provide free legal clinics. Aunt Martha, drawing on her teaching background, proposed curriculum for schools about recognizing manipulation and coercion. Even teenagers in the family contributed ideas about using social media to spread awareness. Brad tried to destroy us, I said, as the meeting concluded. Instead, he's given us the opportunity to save dozens of other families from similar pain. His legacy won't be the theft he attempted, but the protection we'll provide. Marcus Washington's phone buzzed with a message from the federal prosecutor. Brad's been denied bail. Given the organized crime connections and flight risk, he'll remain in custody until trial. They're estimating 15 to 25 years, possibly more, if other families' cases strengthen the charges. A complex mix of emotions crossed Robert's face. Relief, shame, grief for the son he'd lost to greed and crime. Diane took his hand, and for the first time since Brad's arrest, they seemed united in their determination to move forward. There's something else, David Chen announced, pulling up a final screen. While investigating Brad's network, we discovered he wasn't the first attempt to infiltrate our family. They were probing attacks 2 years ago trying to find vulnerabilities. They failed because of the systems Jacqueline had in place. You mean, Mom started. Jacqueline's been protecting us from threats we didn't even know existed, David confirmed. Brad was just the first one to use an insight approach. Without her security measures, we might have lost everything years ago. The room turned to me with expressions I'd never seen before. Not just gratitude or respect, but genuine awe at what I'd built and protected in the shadows. And I didn't build those systems expecting attacks, I said honestly. I built them because Grandpa taught me that good fences make good neighbors. Turns out they also keep out wolves. As the family filed out, each member stopping to offer personal thanks or apologies, I felt a shift in our dynamic. We were no longer just relatives bound by blood and shared assets. We'd become allies in a larger fight, united by purpose beyond profit. Brad had forced us to confront uncomfortable truths about wealth, family, and the vulnerabilities both created. But in doing so, he'd inadvertently forged us into something stronger, a family that protected not just its own interests, but the interests of every family vulnerable to internal predation. The counterstrike we'd launched went far beyond stopping Brad. We'd declared war on the entire ecosystem that enabled family financial abuse. And with the resources, technology, and hard-won wisdom at our disposal, it was a war we intended to win. The fortress I'd built in shadows would now stand in daylight, not just protecting the Meridian family, but offering shelter to any family wise enough to seek it. Brad's betrayal, painful as it was, had transformed us from victims to victors, from the betrayed to the protectors. And that transformation was worth more than all the millions he'd tried to steal. The next 72 hours revealed just how deeply Brad's tentacles had spread through our extended network. As news of his arrest and the broader criminal investigation became public, my phone became a lifeline for family members I'd barely spoken to in years. The first call came from my cousin, Patricia, Uncle Jerome's daughter, who'd fled the family 5 years earlier. Her voice trembled with a mixture of relief and old pain. Jacqueline, I just saw the news. Brad's really been arrested. Patricia? I breathed, genuinely happy to hear from her. Yes, he's in federal custody. Multiple charges, including what he did to you. Dad told you. He told everyone. Publicly admitted he failed you by not acting on your complaint. He's been destroyed by guilt, Patricia. Not that it excuses anything, but he's genuinely remorseful. Silence stretched between us before she spoke again. I've been in therapy for 3 years. My therapist said I'd know when I was ready to consider reconnecting with family. Seeing Brad in handcuffs on the news, I think I might be ready. Take all the time you need, but know that the family has changed dramatically. We've implemented protections, mandatory reporting, zero tolerance. What happened to you will never happen again on our watch. Could I maybe help with that? With the Emma Meridian Center? I'm a social worker now, specializing in trauma from family abuse. Seems fitting, doesn't it? My throat tightened. Patricia, that would be incredible. Emma would be honored. The family would be grateful. And selfishly, I'd love to have my cousin back. She promised to call Emma directly, and I hung up, feeling something I hadn't experienced in days. Pure hope. But Patricia was just the beginning. Marcus Davidson, Brad's younger brother, arrived at my office that afternoon, looking determined but fragile. The chemistry teacher who'd finally stood up to his brother carried himself differently now, shoulders straight despite the weight of family shame. "I've been documenting things for years," he said without preamble, placing a worn notebook on my desk. "Every scheme Brad ran, every person he hurt, every time our parents made excuses. I was too scared to act, but I couldn't stop witnessing." The notebook was damning. Detailed entries dating back a decade chronicling Brad's evolution from spoiled entitlement to criminal enterprise. Marcus had recorded conversations, noted behavioral patterns, even attempted to warn certain victims anonymously. "Why didn't you come forward sooner?" I asked gently, recognizing the survivor's guilt in his eyes. "He's my brother. Was my brother, and our parents, they made me feel like I was betraying family by even questioning him." Classic golden child dynamic. Brad could do no wrong, I was just jealous of his success. He laughed bitterly. "Some success. You're coming forward now. That matters." Does it? Emma carried her trauma for years. Patricia lost 5 years with her family. Other cousins, family friends. How many people suffered while I took notes like some passive observer? You were a victim too, Marcus. Different from the women he harassed, but still a victim of his manipulation and your parents' enabling. The fact that you documented everything means we can establish patterns, maybe prevent other families from creating their own Brads. Marcus straightened slightly. "That's actually why I'm here. I want to help with the institute. I teach high school. I see kids every day who are either budding Brads or potential victims. If I could develop curriculum about recognizing manipulation, understanding family dynamics, building ethical foundations." "Yes," I said immediately. "Absolutely yes. Prevention through education might be our most powerful tool." As Marcus left with plans to develop a comprehensive program, my assistant knocked. "Jacqueline, there's a line of people in the lobby." They all say they're family wanting to help. The parade that followed was overwhelming. Cousins who'd stayed silent offered professional expertise. A forensic accountant, a cybersecurity specialist, a family therapist. Each had witnessed Brad's toxicity but felt powerless to act until now. My second cousin Rachel, a corporate attorney, had particularly valuable insights. "Brad approached me 2 years ago about restructuring opportunities in the family trust. When I realized he was fishing for loopholes, I declined to help. He threatened to spread rumors about my divorce claim I'd been disbarred for ethics violations." "Did you document the threats?" "Every text, every email. I'm a lawyer. Documentation is my religion. I've already forwarded everything to the federal prosecutor, but I want to do more than just provide evidence. I want to help build legal frameworks that prevent this kind of exploitation." By end of day, we'd assembled an impromptu war council. 12 family members with diverse expertise, all united by shared trauma and determination to prevent others from experiencing the same. Aunt Catherine's daughter, Melissa, a data analyst for a major tech firm, proposed something revolutionary. What if we create an algorithm that identifies potential financial predators within family structures, behavioral patterns, transaction anomalies, communication analysis? AI could flag concerns before they escalate to Brad's level. "Privacy concerns," Jennifer asked. "Opt-in system," Melissa clarified. "Families could choose to participate, understanding that some privacy is sacrificed for protection. Think of it as a financial health monitor for family dynamics." The irony, Uncle Jerome observed, is that Brad's narcissism created his downfall. He documented everything, kept meticulous records, never imagined he'd be caught. His hubris is giving us the data to prevent future Brads. Emma, who'd been quiet during the discussion, finally spoke. I've been thinking about the shame factor. How many of us stayed quiet because we were embarrassed, afraid of not being believed, worried about causing family drama? We need to address that culture of silence. Anonymous reporting systems, suggested Patricia, joining via video call. Create multiple channels for concerns to be raised without fear of retaliation. Yes, but also culture change, Emma continued. We grew up in a family where keeping peace was more important than keeping people safe. That mindset enabled Brad for years. We need to model and teach a different way. As the group brainstormed, something beautiful emerged. The family members Brad had victimized or marginalized were becoming the architects of a new family structure. Their pain was transforming into purpose, their silence into powerful advocacy. Robert and Diane arrived as we were wrapping up. Brad's parents had aged visibly in the past week, but they entered with quiet dignity rather than their previous defensiveness. We failed as parents, Robert said simply. Failed Brad by enabling him, failed the family. By protecting him, failed his victims by dismissing their concerns. We can't undo that damage, but we want to help prevent other parents from making our mistakes. Diane pulled out a checkbook. We're liquidating everything. The vacation homes, the boat, Brad's college fund, that he never used, our retirement overflow. Roughly $2 million. We want it all to go to the victims fund and the prevention programs. That's not necessary, I started, but Robert cut me off. It's entirely necessary. Brad learned his values somewhere. From us. From watching us prioritize wealth over character image over integrity. This money is tainted by our failures. Let it be cleansed by serving those Brad hurt. The room fell silent at the magnitude of their gesture. Then Marcus, their younger son, stood and embraced them. This is the first time I've been proud to be your son in years, he whispered, loud enough for all to hear. As the impromptu meeting concluded, I looked around at the assembled family members. These weren't the same people who'd voted me out just a week ago. Tragedy had transformed them, truth had liberated them, and purpose had united them. Brad thought he was the smart one, Grandma observed from her seat at the table's head. Thought he could manipulate us all like chess pieces. But look what he actually accomplished. He brought together the best parts of this family, united us in purpose, and created an army of advocates for justice. An expensive lesson, Dad said quietly. He'd remained largely silent during the meeting, still navigating his own shame. All important lessons are expensive, Grandma replied. The question is whether we learn them. This family is choosing to learn. As people began to leave, making commitments and exchanging contact information, I felt a hand on my shoulder. Mom stood there looking more clear-eyed than she had in years. I've been thinking about my role in all this, she said. Not just enabling Brad or dismissing Emma, but the broader culture I helped create. The emphasis on appearances, the shopping to fill emotional voids, the way I taught you and Emma that keeping quiet was more ladylike than speaking truth. Mom, let me finish. I want to work with the Institute too. Not in finance or law. I don't have those skills, but I understand the psychology of denial, the way families create myths to avoid uncomfortable truths. I want to help other mothers recognize when they're choosing comfort over their children's safety. I hugged her, then feeling walls between us crumble. That would be invaluable, Mom. So many enablers don't see themselves as part of the problem. Your perspective could save families. As the office emptied, Jennifer and I stood looking at the whiteboard covered with ideas, commitments, and contact information. What had started as a family crisis had evolved into a movement. You realize what's happening here, Jennifer said. This isn't just about stopping financial predators anymore. You're rebuilding the entire concept of family governance, creating frameworks that prioritize protection over profit, integrity over image. We're rebuilding, I corrected. I couldn't do this alone. Brad's victims are becoming the heroes of this story. Their courage is transforming our family and potentially thousands of others. My phone buzzed with a message from Patricia. Booked a flight home. Emma and I are having dinner tomorrow to discuss the center. Thank you for making space for me to return on my own terms. The family I'm coming back to isn't the one I left, and that's everything. I smiled thinking about how Brad had intended to scatter us to divide and conquer for his own gain. Instead, he'd created an unbreakable alliance of survivors, advocates, and reformed enablers. His victims had become victors, his targets had become teachers, his prey had become protectors. The Meridian family he'd tried to destroy was gone. In its place stood something far more powerful, a united force for justice, armed with hard-won wisdom and determined to ensure no family suffered as we had. Brad had wanted to be the wolf among sheep. He'd succeeded only in teaching the sheep to become shepherds, protecting not just themselves, but entire flocks from predators like him. And that transformation, from vulnerable to vigilant, from silent to outspoken, from divided to united, was worth more than any amount he could have stolen. The allies emerging from our shared trauma weren't just family anymore. They were warriors in a larger battle, one we now had the resources, knowledge, and determination to win. The story broke in the financial press first. Meridian family betrayal exposes nationwide wealth targeting scheme, read the Wall Street Journal headline. By noon, it was trending on social media and my phone hadn't stopped buzzing since dawn. Jennifer burst into my office, tablet in hand. "Jacqueline, we have a situation. 3 major news outlets want exclusive interviews. The FBI is asking us to coordinate public messaging, and somehow a blogger got hold of Emma's harassment documentation." "Which blogger?" "Samantha Chen. She runs Wealth and Whispers, focusing on family dynasty scandals. She's being respectful, actually. Wants to interview Emma about surviving family predators, not going for sensationalism." I pulled up the blog on my screen. The post was thoughtful, focusing on the systemic issues that allowed Brad to operate rather than salacious details. Still, seeing our family's pain publicly dissected was jarring. "Get Emma on the phone. This has to be her choice." While Jennifer made the call, Marcus Washington arrived with 2 FBI agents. The lead agent, Special Agent Rivera, looked exhausted but satisfied. "Miss Meridian, the Brad Davidson case has blown open a massive investigation. We've identified similar schemes in 6 other states. Your documentation and cooperation have been invaluable, but now we need to manage public perception." Meaning, the families Brad targeted are panicking. Some are lawyering up, others are going to media with half-truths. We need a coordinated response that protects the investigation while reassuring other potential victims it's safe to come forward. Emma arrived as we were strategizing, looking surprisingly composed. I already responded to Samantha Chen. "Set up an interview for tomorrow. If we're going public, I want to control the narrative." "Are you sure?" I asked. "Once this is out there, you can't take it back." "I've been silent for 2 years. Silence protected Brad, not me. Maybe my story helps another woman recognize the warning signs, gives her courage to speak up before it escalates." The FBI agents exchanged glances. Rivera cleared her throat. "Miss Meridian, Emma, we support your decision, but we need to ensure nothing compromises ongoing investigations. Would you be willing to have our public affairs team review your talking points? As long as they don't censor my truth, just protect the legal case." Over the next 2 days, our family's private catastrophe became a public cautionary tale. Emma's interview with Samantha Chen went viral. Her composed articulation of grooming patterns within wealthy families resonating with thousands of readers. The comments section became a confessional, with person after person sharing similar experiences. Then came the call I'd been dreading. Thomas Morrison, CEO of Morrison Industries, where Dad had worked, wanted to meet. The embezzlement Dad had confessed to hadn't been public yet, but that was about to change. Morrison arrived at our offices looking every inch the corporate titan, silver-haired, impeccably dressed, radiating authority. But his first words surprised me. Jacqueline, I'm not here about your father's theft. I'm here because Brad Davidson tried to infiltrate Morrison Industries 2 years ago." I sat straighter. What? He approached us, claiming to have insider knowledge about your family's investment strategies, offered to share information for a consulting fee. We declined and documented everything, thinking he was just another unethical opportunist. Now we realize we were witnessing something far more sinister. Morrison pulled out a folder of correspondence. Brad's attempts to monetize family information extended far beyond what we'd discovered. He'd pitched wealth management insights to dozens of companies, essentially trying to sell our family's financial DNA to the highest bidder. We've shared this with the FBI, Morrison continued, but I wanted you to know personally. Your father, his mistakes pale compared to what Brad attempted. We're not pressing charges against him. He's already paid restitution, and frankly, his confession helped us identify security weaknesses Brad might have exploited. Relief washed over me. Thank you. That means more than you know. There's something else. Morrison Industries wants to partner with your institute. Corporate financial predation is real. We've seen it from inside and outside. Your frameworks could help protect companies as well as families. As Morrison left promising significant funding for our programs, I realized the scope of what we'd uncovered. Brad wasn't just a family predator. He was part of an entire ecosystem of wealth targeting that crossed personal and corporate boundaries. The next surprise came from an unexpected source. Tony the Hammer Torino's lawyer contacted Marcus Washington. The mob enforcer facing life in prison wanted to make a deal. My client has information about 12 other Brad Davidsons, family members feeding information to organized crime across the eastern seaboard. He's willing to testify in exchange for consideration. The meeting with federal prosecutors was surreal. Tony Torino, via secure video link from federal custody, looked nothing like the threatening enforcer of reputation. Orange jumpsuit, reading glasses, and a weary expression made him seem almost ordinary. Brad wasn't special, Tony said bluntly. Kids like him are everywhere in wealthy families. Entitled, desperate, willing to sell out their own blood for a quick score. We had a whole network of them. Names, Agent Rivera demanded. I'll need guarantees first. But I can tell you this. Brad was middle management at best. The real players are the ones who look respectable. Sit on charity boards, get featured in society pages while selling their family's secrets to whoever pays. The revelations sent shockwaves through high society. Prominent families began internal audits, suspicious of their own members. The financial press couldn't get enough of the story, dubbing it the Great Family Betrayal and analyzing how generational wealth created its own vulnerabilities. But the most impactful exposure came from an unexpected source. Channel 9's investigative unit had been following our story, and reporter Maria Santos requested an exclusive with our entire family. After much debate, we agreed. The interview took place in Grandma's living room, the same space where Brad had been exposed. Maria Santos, known for her tough but fair approach, didn't pull punches. Mrs. Helena Meridian, you're 91 years old, built substantial wealth through real estate. How did you not see what your great-nephew was doing? Grandma, magnificent in her purple dress, met the camera directly. Because I chose comfort over vigilance. When you reach my age, you want to believe your family is secure, that the next generation will protect what you've built. That assumption nearly destroyed us. The interview was brutal in its honesty. Dad admitted his embezzlement on national television. Mom discussed her enabling behavior. Emma detailed the harassment with clinical precision. Even Brad's parents appeared taking full responsibility for raising an entitled predator. We gave him everything except values, Robert said, Diane holding his hand. Every excuse we made, every blind eye we turned, contributed to creating a man who would prey on his own family. But it was Marcus, Brad's brother, who delivered the most powerful moment. I watched my brother transform from a spoiled kid into a criminal, and I documented it but did nothing. Every family watching needs to understand. Silence is complicity. If you see warning signs, speak up. The family reputation you're protecting isn't worth the lives that will be destroyed. Maria Santos turned to me for the closing segment. Jacqueline Meridian, you built a $40 million portfolio while protecting your family from threats they didn't even know existed. Now you're taking that knowledge public. Why? Because every family thinks they're immune until it's too late. Wealth doesn't protect you from predators, it attracts them. And the most dangerous predators are often the ones sitting at your holiday table who know exactly which buttons to push because they helped install them. What's your message to families watching? 3 things. First, transparency is your best defense. Secrets create shadows where predators hide. Second, trust, but verify. Love your family, but protect your assets with proper governance. Third, if something feels wrong, it probably is. Don't let politeness or family pressure silence your instincts. The interview aired during prime time, drawing millions of viewers. The response was overwhelming. Our institute's website crashed from traffic. Thousands of emails poured in from families recognizing their own Brads, their own patterns of enabling and denial. A week later, the first major victory came. The Williamsburg family, old tobacco money, facing third-generation decline, reached out. Their nephew had been exhibiting Brad-like behavior, and the interview gave them courage to investigate. They discovered he'd already siphoned $2 million through forged documents. "You saved us," Mrs. Williamsburg said over the phone. "Without your family's courage in going public, we'd have lost everything." Similar stories emerged daily. The Patel family discovered their son-in-law had been selling business intelligence. The O'Brien Foundation found a board member redirecting funds. Each exposure led to more families coming forward, creating a domino effect of truth-telling. But the public exposure also brought unexpected consequences. Brad, from federal custody, gave his own interview to a tabloid journalist. He painted himself as a victim of family dysfunction, claimed I'd orchestrated everything to seize control. His lies were transparent, but they found audience among those who preferred conspiracy to confronting uncomfortable truths about family and wealth. "Let him talk," Emma said when we discussed it. "Every lie he tells just proves who he really is." The families were helping know the truth. She was right. Brad's attempts at spin only highlighted his narcissism and lack of remorse. The federal prosecutor actually thanked us. His interview provided additional evidence of his criminal mindset. The public exposure culminated in a congressional hearing on family financial predation. I testified alongside expert survivors and reformed enablers. The statistics we'd compiled were staggering. An estimated $30 billion in family wealth stolen or compromised annually by insider threats. "This isn't just about money," I told the assembled representatives. "It's about the destruction of trust, the exploitation of love, the weaponization of family bonds." Brad Davidson is in prison, but thousands of others like him operate freely because families are too ashamed to speak up. The hearing led to proposed legislation, the Family Financial Protection Act, mandating disclosure requirements for family trusts and creating federal oversight for wealth management above certain thresholds. As I left the Capitol building, my phone rang. It was Patricia calling from the Emma Meridian Center, where she now worked full-time. "Jacqueline, you need to know something. We've had over 1,000 requests for help just this week. Families from every state, every economic level. The public exposure isn't just raising awareness, it's starting a movement." I stood on the Capitol steps, looking out at a city built on ideals of justice and democracy. Our family's private nightmare had become a public catalyst for change. Brad had tried to operate in darkness, counting on shame and silence to protect his crimes. Instead, his exposure had illuminated an entire hidden ecosystem of family predation. The cost had been high: our privacy, our carefully maintained image, our comfortable illusions. But the value created was immeasurable. Every family saved, every predator exposed, every victim empowered to speak truth. That was the real return on investment. Brad had wanted to steal $40 million. Instead, he'd launched a revolution worth billions in protected family wealth and priceless in preserved family bonds. His legacy wouldn't be the theft he'd attempted, but the transformation he'd unwittingly initiated. The Meridian name, once associated with quiet wealth and family business, now stood for something greater: the courage to expose truth, the wisdom to build protections, and the determination to ensure no family suffered in silence again. Public exposure had been painful, but like sunlight on a wound, it was necessary for healing. And as families across the nation began their own journey from secrets to safety, I knew we'd made the right choice. The fortress I'd built in shadows hadn't just emerged into daylight. It had become a beacon guiding other families away from the rocks where predators waited. And that transformation from hidden to herald, from protected to protector, was the greatest victory of all. The federal courthouse in downtown stood like a monument to justice, its marble columns reflecting the early morning sun. After 9 months of preparation, delays, and legal maneuvering, United States versus Bradley Davidson was finally going to trial. I arrived early, accompanied by Jennifer and Marcus Washington. The media presence was overwhelming. News vans lined the street. Reporters thrust microphones at anyone who looked connected to the case. We pushed through without comment, saving our words for where they mattered. Inside the courtroom was already filling. The prosecution team, led by Assistant U.S. Attorney Patricia Chen, no relation to blogger Samantha Chen, had warned us this would be grueling. Brad faced 27 federal charges, including racketeering fraud, conspiracy, extortion, and money laundering. The evidence was overwhelming, but Brad's defense team, paid for by liquidating his remaining hidden assets, was known for courtroom theatrics. Remember, Patricia Chen had coached us, he's going to try to paint himself as a victim of family dynamics. Stay focused on facts, not emotions. Emma sat in the front row, flanked by our parents and grandma. Brad's parents, Robert and Diane, sat across the aisle, their presence a testament to choosing justice over blind loyalty. The other families Brad had targeted sent representatives, creating a united front of victims, refusing to remain silent. Brad entered in shackles, the orange jumpsuit a stark contrast to the designer suits he'd once favored. 9 months in federal custody had changed him. Gone was the cocky manipulator, replaced by someone harder, more calculating. His eyes swept the courtroom, lingering on each family member with undisguised hatred. The prosecution's opening statement was masterful. Patricia Chen laid out Brad's crimes with surgical precision, using his own meticulous records against him. The defendant didn't just betray family trust, she stated. He weaponized it. He turned love into leverage, transformed family bonds into financial bondage. This wasn't desperation or poor judgment. This was systematic predation, spanning years, affecting dozens of families, enabling organized crime to infiltrate generational wealth. The defense attorney, Martin Rothschild, painted a different picture. Brad was a victim of family pressure, driven to desperate measures by impossible expectations. He'd made mistakes, yes, but criminal intent. That was prosecution overreach. My client grew up in a family obsessed with wealth, Rothschild argued. Every interaction transactional, every relationship measured in dollars. Is it any wonder he internalized these toxic values? I felt Mom stiffen beside me. The truth, in Rothschild's words, the family's emphasis on money over meaning, was hard to hear even as we recognized it as manipulation. The first week of testimony established the financial crimes. FBI forensic accountants detailed Brad's embezzlement, the forged documents, the shell companies. The complexity was staggering. Brad had created a financial maze designed to hide millions in stolen funds. When I took the stand, Rothschild immediately went on attack. Miss Meridian, isn't it true you controlled family finances with an iron fist? I managed family investments, yes, and refused numerous requests from family members, including my client. I refused to invest in schemes that were clearly fraudulent. The Moon Lambo cryptocurrency Brad wanted $50,000 for was shut down by the SEC 2 days after I declined. But you made these decisions unilaterally, Patricia Chen objected before I could answer. Relevance. Your Honor, Miss Meridian's investment strategies aren't on trial. Sustained. Move on, counselor. Rothschild shifted tactics. You built substantial wealth for your family. Correct $40 million. Through legitimate means, transparent processes, and legal channels. Every transaction documented every investment above board. Unlike my client who had to watch from the sidelines as you accumulated power, I met his gaze steadily. Your client had every opportunity I did. The difference is I chose to build while he chose to steal. The most powerful testimony came from the other families Brad had targeted. Mrs. Patel, dignified in her sari, described discovering her nephew had been feeding Brad information about their import business. The Richardsons detailed how Brad's intelligence nearly cost them a crucial merger. Each story reinforced the pattern. Brad as calculating predator, not desperate family member. Then came Emma's testimony. The courtroom fell silent as she took the stand, radiating calm strength. Patricia Chen guided her through the harassment, introducing the text messages, photos, and recordings into evidence. He made me feel unsafe in my own family, Emma stated. Every gathering became a minefield. Would he corner me again? Would anyone believe me if I complained? He counted on family politeness and my parents' disbelief to protect him. Rothschild's cross-examination was carefully respectful. Attacking a sexual harassment victim would alienate the jury. Miss Meridian, did you ever directly tell my client to stop? Multiple times. I have recordings of me explicitly saying, "Stop, ma, no, and leave me alone." Would you like me to specify which exhibits? That won't be necessary. No further questions. Brad's parents' testimony was heartbreaking. Robert Davidson, once Brad's staunchest defender, methodically detailed his son's lies, manipulations, and crimes. I enabled him, Robert said simply. Every excuse I made, every blind eye I turned, contributed to creating the man in that defendant's chair. I'm testifying not to hurt my son, but to prevent other parents from making our mistakes. When Brad himself took the stand, his narcissism couldn't stay hidden. He started controlled sticking to Rothschild's script about family pressure and desperate circumstances. But under Patricia Chen's skilled cross-examination, the mask slipped. You documented everything, Chen noted, showing his detailed records. Why keep such meticulous files? Insurance, Brad said before Rothschild could object. These people would have thrown me under the bus eventually. I needed protection. Protection from your victims, from the family that used me and discarded me. Used you how Mr. Davidson, by giving you opportunities, by trusting you with financial access, by refusing to question your obviously inflated lifestyle. Brad's composure cracked. They flaunted their wealth, Jacqueline sitting there like some financial goddess while the rest of us begged for scraps. The scraps being a $200,000 education, multiple failed businesses funded by family, and a salary from the family fund despite no actual work. I deserved more. That admission hung in the air. The jury saw him clearly, not a desperate man driven to crime, but an entitled predator who believed his wants superseded others' rights. The prosecution's final witness was Anthony the Hammer Torino, appearing via video from federal prison. His testimony connected Brad to organized crime, detailing how family financial information was packaged and sold to criminal enterprises. Brad wasn't some naive kid, Tony stated. He knew exactly what he was doing, pitched himself as having premium intel on high net worth targets, even offered to expand the operation to other cities. Rothschild's attempt to discredit a mob enforcer's testimony fell flat when Tony produced recordings of Brad negotiating prices for family secrets. The jury heard Brad's voice, haggling over the value of his grandmother's trust, details his cousin's investment strategies, his own parents' financial vulnerabilities. Closing arguments crystallized the case. Rothschild made a valiant effort painting Brad as a product of toxic family dynamics driven to extremes by a system that valued wealth over humanity. But Patricia Chen's response was devastating. The defense wants you to believe family dysfunction excuses systematic crime. That feeling entitled justifies theft. That sexual harassment is somehow mitigated by financial frustration. Every family has dynamics, tensions, conflicts. The vast majority don't produce criminals who sell their grandmother's financial data to organized crime. She clicked through exhibits, the forged documents, the harassment evidence, the money trails, the mob connections. Bradley Davidson made choices, calculated, documented, repeated choices to prey on those who loved him, trusted him, gave him every opportunity to succeed legitimately. He chose crime not from desperation, but from entitlement. He believed his family owed him wealth, that women owed him attention, that society owed him status. When reality didn't match his expectations, he decided to take by force and fraud what was never his. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. As they filed back in, I held Emma's hand on one side, Mom's on the other. Brad stood as the verdict was read, his jaw clenched. Guilty, guilty, guilty. 27 times the word rang out, each count a nail in the coffin of Brad's freedom. RICO violations alone carried 20 years. Combined with fraud, extortion, and conspiracy charges, he faced potential life imprisonment. Brad's reaction was telling. No remorse, no breakdown. Just cold fury directed at the family section. As guards prepared to lead him away, he locked eyes with me. This isn't over, he mouthed. But he was wrong. It was over, at least his part in our story. Sentencing came 6 weeks later. The judge, Honorable Maria Santos, coincidentally sharing a name with the reporter who'd interviewed us, didn't mince words. And Mr. Davidson, you represent a particularly insidious form of criminal. You exploited family trust, weaponized intimate knowledge, and pokazali complete disregard for the bonds most hold sacred. Your lack of remorse, evident throughout these proceedings, confirms you remain a danger to society. She sentenced him to 35 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole for 25. Restitution to all victims, totaling $8 million. Lifetime ban on any financial management role. Mandatory psychological counseling focused on narcissistic personality disorder. As the gavel fell, I felt no triumph, only relief. Justice had been served, but the cost, a family torn apart trust, shattered innocence, lost, couldn't be calculated in courtroom victories. Outside the courthouse, media waited for statements. This time, we were ready. Emma stepped to the microphones, composed and powerful. Today's verdict doesn't erase the harm Brad Davidson caused, but it ensures he can't hurt anyone else. More importantly, it sends a message. Family predators will be exposed, prosecuted, and punished. Silence is no longer an option. She announced the expansion of the Emma Meridian Center, now federally funded thanks to congressional support. The Meridian Institute would partner with law enforcement nationwide, creating a database of family financial predation patterns. Brad Davidson thought he was stealing money, Emma concluded. Instead, he galvanized a movement. Every family watching who recognizes these patterns in their own dynamics, reach out. You're not alone, and you don't have to suffer in silence. As we walked away from the courthouse, Grandma took my arm. At 92, she moved slowly, but with undiminished dignity. You did it, dear one, she said quietly. You protected the family even when we didn't deserve it. Your grandfather would be so proud. We all did it, I corrected. Even Brad in his twisted way. His crimes forced us to confront truths we'd buried for generations. We're stronger now. Expensive lesson, she noted with dry humor. The most important ones usually are. That evening, the family gathered at Grandma's house, not for crisis management, but for celebration. The house that had witnessed Brad's exposure now hosted his victim's victory. Patricia had flown in from her new job counseling family trauma survivors. Marcus Davidson played piano-filling rooms, once heavy with secrets with music. Even Brad's parents were there, finding solace in the family that had chosen justice over enablement. To justice, Uncle Jerome toasted, raising his glass. To truth, Emma added. To family, I concluded. The real kind, built on honesty, protected by transparency, strengthened by surviving our worst betrayal. As glasses clinked and conversation flowed, I realized the legal victory was just one component of our triumph. The real win was in this room, a family that had faced its demons, exposed its predator, and chosen to rebuild on foundations of truth rather than comfortable lies. Brad was gone, locked away where he could hurt no one else. But his legacy lived on in the protections we'd built, the families we'd saved, the movements we'd started. He'd wanted to destroy us for $40 million. Instead, he'd transformed us into something worth far more, a family that protected not just its wealth, but its most vulnerable members. The legal victory was satisfying, but the human victory, the transformation from enablers to advocates, from victims to victors, from silent to outspoken, that was the verdict that truly mattered. The first Thanksgiving after Brad's conviction arrived with unseasonable warmth and unexpected grace. Grandma had insisted on hosting, declaring that reclaiming our family gatherings from the shadow of Brad's crimes was essential to healing. I arrived early to help with preparations, finding Mom already in the kitchen, apron tied and flour dusted. The sight was jarring. Mom, who'd previously ordered all holiday meals from caterers, was actually cooking. "Don't look so shocked," she said, laughing at my expression. "Therapy homework. Dr. Morrison says I need to practice being present in simple tasks instead of throwing money at everything." "How's that going?" "The turkey might be edible. The pies are definitely store-bought." Baby steps. We worked side by side, the familiar rhythm of kitchen prep, creating space for conversation that had been impossible during the crisis months. Mom talked about her therapy sessions, how she was unpacking decades of using wealth as emotional armor. "I shopped to avoid feeling," she admitted, checking the turkey. "Bought things for you and Emma instead of listening to you. Threw money at problems instead of addressing them. No wonder Brad thought everything could be purchased." We modeled that belief. "We all contributed to the family dynamics," I said gently. "Brad made his own choices." "Yes, but we created the soil he grew in. That's what Robert and Diane are learning too. They're coming today, you know." I paused in my chopping. "Brad's parents. Are we sure that's wise? They're still family. Their son's crimes don't erase that. Besides, Marcus needs his parents, and we need to show that accountability doesn't mean exile." By noon, the house filled with arrivals. Each entrance carried weight. These weren't just relatives gathering for turkey and football. These were survivors, reformers, truth-tellers assembling to create new traditions. Patricia's arrival sparked joy. After 5 years of self-imposed exile, she walked through Grandma's door to applause and tears. Her father, Jerome, held her like she might disappear again. "I'm here," she whispered. "I'm really here." Emma had brought her new boyfriend, David, a fellow medical student who'd supported her through the trial. Introducing significant others to our family carried new meaning now. We'd learned the hard way that who we welcomed into our circle mattered. "Fair warning," Emma told David with dark humor. "We're a lot. Formerly toxic, currently therapeutic, always dramatic." "Sounds like my residency program," he replied, earning immediate approval from Grandma. The surprise arrival was Melissa Chen, Aunt Catherine's daughter, who designed our predator detection algorithm. She'd brought her partner Angela and their newly adopted daughter Lily. "We used the family fund's new education provision," Melissa explained, Lily shy against her leg. "Adoption costs are definitely education. We're learning to be parents." "That's exactly what the fund should support," I said, kneeling to Lily's level. "Welcome to the family, sweetheart. Fair warning. We're weird, but working on it." Robert and Diane's entrance shifted the energy. Conversations paused as Brad's parents stood uncertainly in the doorway. It was Marcus who broke the tension, crossing to embrace them. "You came," he said simply. "You invited us," Robert replied, voice thick. "That means everything." The meal itself became a lesson in new dynamics. Instead of the segregated seating of past years, kids' table men discussing businesswomen managing logistics, we mixed deliberately. Grandma at the head, flanked by Patricia and Emma, sending a clear message about whose voices mattered now. Before we eat, Grandma announced new tradition. Everyone shares one thing they're genuinely grateful for. Not platitudes, but truth. Uncle Jerome started. I am grateful my daughter forgave my cowardice and came home. Patricia squeezed his hand. I'm grateful for therapy and the courage to trust family again. Around the table it went. Mom grateful for learning to feel without shopping. Dad grateful for second chances I don't deserve but am determined to earn. Marcus grateful for parents who chose justice over denial. When it reached Robert, Brad's father struggled. I'm grateful my son's victims became my teachers. You could have exiled us. Instead, you're showing us how to be better. Emma's turn was powerful. I'm grateful for my voice, for finally being heard, for a family that learned to listen. I'm grateful, I said when my turn came, for transformation. We could have stayed a family that prioritized comfort over truth. Brad's crimes forced us to choose, and we chose to change. Grandma went last. 92 years and I'm still learning. I'm grateful for time. Time to see truth prevail. Time to watch this family become what it should have been all along. Dinner conversation flowed with new ease. No segregated topics, no hushed concerns about appropriate discussion. Marcus talked about teaching Patricia about her trauma, counseling work, Dad about his community service sentence, teaching financial literacy to inmates. Ironic right, Dad said self-deprecatingly. The embezzler teaching ethics. But the judge thought my story might reach them. Privileged guy who lost everything to greed rebuilding through accountability. How do they respond? David asked, genuinely curious. Better than you'd think. Turns out criminals appreciate honesty about crime. No judgment, just acknowledgement that we all made choices and are living with consequences. Dessert brought unexpected revelation. Diane, quiet throughout dinner, suddenly spoke. I need to share something about Brad, about why we're really here. The table stilled. Robert took her hand, nodding encouragement. I visited Brad last week. First time since sentencing. She paused, gathering strength. He asked me to smuggle him information about the family. Said he had friends outside who could use financial data that he could trade it for protection inside. Shocked silence met this admission. Even from federal prison, he's trying to prey on us, Mom's voice rose. I reported it immediately, Diane continued. The FBI added it to his file, but I needed you all to know. He hasn't changed. Won't change. Some people, even your own children, are beyond redemption. That must have been incredibly painful to accept, Grandma said gently. Accepting it was liberation, Diane replied. We spent so long making excuses believing we could love him better. But you can't love someone out of being a predator. You can only protect others from them. Robert added, we're initiating proceedings to legally disown him. Not from anger, but from clarity. He's made his choice to remain a threat. We're making ours to stand with his victims. The weight of their decision settled over the table. Parents choosing justice over blood protection over denial. It was perhaps the most profound transformation in our family's journey. To clarity, Emma raised her glass, even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts, Patricia corrected. As evening approached, we moved to Grandma's living room, the site of so many confrontations now hosting genuine connection. Photo albums emerged, but instead of avoiding difficult memories, we faced them directly. Look, Marcus pointed to a photo from 5 years ago, Brad's college graduation. See how he's standing apart even then, like he's calculating everyone's worth. And here, Mom indicated another photo last Christmas. Emma, you're literally leaning away from him. Body language doesn't lie. We spent hours recontextualizing memories through the lens of truth. It wasn't about demonizing the past, but understanding it honestly. Every photo told two stories, what we'd chosen to see then, and what had actually been happening. This is therapeutic, Patricia noted. Reclaiming narrative control. We can't change what happened, but we can change what it means. Late in the evening, after others had left, the core group remained. Me, Emma, our parents, and Grandma. The house felt different, lighter, as if secrets had been exercised through honest conversation. I owe you both an apology, Dad said suddenly, not just for the embezzlement or the vote, but for years of being an absent father who measured success in dollars instead of connection. Same, Mom added. I was so focused on appearing perfect that I forgot to actually be present. You raised yourselves while I maintained facades. We raised each other, Emma corrected. Jacqueline was my real parent in many ways. Made sure I got to school, helped with homework, taught me about integrity. Which is why, I said, seizing the moment, I want to propose something. The Meridian Institute needs leadership. I can't do it alone anymore. Emma, would you consider co-directing with me? Emma's eyes widened. But I'm still in residency. Part-time to start. Your experience, your perspective. We need that balance. I've protected wealth. You've protected people. Together we can protect both. Yes, she said immediately. Absolutely yes. And us? Mom asked hesitantly. What role can we play? The same one you're playing now, I replied, being honest, growing, showing other families that change is possible. Your therapy journey, Dad's teaching, those stories matter. As midnight approached, Grandma made her own announcement. I've been thinking about legacy, she said. Not money, we've handled that, but wisdom. I want to write our story, all of it. The good, the bad, the transformation. Will you help me? A book, Emma asked. A truth-telling. For other families walking our path. So our pain serves purpose beyond ourselves. We agreed immediately. Grandma's memoir would become another tool in our arsenal against family predation, her voice carrying the weight of decades and the wisdom of survival. As we prepared to leave, Mom pulled me aside. Jacqueline, I need you to know something. These past months of therapy, of facing hard truths, they've shown me who you really are. Not just the financial genius who saved us, but the daughter who loved us despite our failures. I'm so proud of who you've become and so sorry it took crisis for me to see it. We hugged, and for the first time in years, it felt real rather than performative. Driving home through quiet streets, I reflected on the day. This Thanksgiving had been nothing like the formal, tense gatherings of previous years. No one had mentioned portfolios or returns or market conditions. Instead, we'd talked about growth, healing, and hope. Brad had wanted to destroy our family for money. He'd succeeded in destroying the family we were comfortable in denial, poisoned by secrets, enabling predators through silence. But in its place, something remarkable had grown. We weren't perfect. Trust remained fragile wounds, still tender, but we were real in ways we'd never been before. The reconciliation wasn't about forgetting Brad's crimes or minimizing their impact. It was about choosing to build something worthy from the wreckage. The family that had gathered for Thanksgiving wasn't wealthy in the old ways. No more blind trust, automatic deference, or unexamined privilege. But we were rich in truth, committed to justice, and united by more than blood or money. We were united by choice. The daily decision to be better than we'd been, to protect the vulnerable, to speak truth even when silence was easier. Brad's legacy of destruction had become our foundation for construction. And that transformation, from a family of secrets to a family of truth-tellers, was the reconciliation that mattered most. 1 year after Brad's conviction, the Meridian Institute for Financial Protection officially opened its headquarters in a restored Victorian building downtown. What had started as crisis response had evolved into a nationally recognized organization. The opening ceremony would mark not just a new chapter for our mission, but for our family itself. I stood in the main conference room watching the final preparations. Emma directed volunteers arranging chairs while Patricia tested the audio system. Jennifer reviewed presentations with our expanded team. The building hummed with purposeful energy. The media response has been incredible, Jennifer reported. We have confirmations from major outlets, 3 congressional representatives, and over 50 families we've helped are sending delegates. And Brad, I asked quietly, filed another appeal from prison. claims the institute is profiting from his defamation. The lawyers aren't concerned. It's desperation, not a real threat. Through the window, I saw Mom and Dad arriving together, their body language reflecting the careful reconstruction of their marriage. Therapy had helped, but rebuilding after Dad's embezzlement required daily choices to trust and forgive. "Jacqueline!" Grandma's voice carried across the room. At 93, she moved slowly, but with unshakable determination. The publisher called. First print run of the memoir sold out. They want to discuss translation rights. "That's amazing, Grandma!" Her memoir, When Family Fails a Meridian Story, had resonated globally. Brutal in its honesty about enabling Brad, inspiring in its account of transformation. It had become required reading for family therapists and financial advisors. "The book is just the beginning," she said, eyes twinkling. "I've been corresponding with families worldwide. The patterns are universal. Different cultures, same predators." The ceremony itself was standing room only. Local dignitaries mingled with reformed families. FBI agents chatted with therapists. Journalists interviewed survivors. The diversity reflected our expanded mission. We weren't just about wealthy families anymore, but protecting any family from internal predation. Marcus Davidson, now our Director of Education, opened the program. His journey from Brad's enabler brother to prevention advocate had been remarkable. "Welcome to what we call the house truth built," he began. "Every beam, every brick represents a lesson learned from failure. We don't hide from our past here. We transform it into tools for your protection." The keynote speaker surprised everyone. Detective Maria Santos, unrelated to either the judge or reporter who'd led the investigation into Tony Torino's network. "The Meridian case changed how we approach financial crimes," she explained. "We'd focused on external threats while predators operated from within family structures. This institute has become our primary resource for understanding and preventing these crimes." She presented statistics that stunned even me. Since Brad's conviction and our institute's work, family financial predation reports had increased 400%. Not because crimes increased, but because victims felt empowered to come forward. Emma took the stage next, introducing the expanded Emma Meridian Center. "We've trained over 300 counselors in recognizing family predation patterns. Our hotline has prevented an estimated 40 million in theft. But more importantly, we've saved lives. Women and men who were being controlled through financial abuse now have escape routes." The surprise announcement came from an unexpected source. Robert and Diane Davidson approached the podium together. Brad's parents had become powerful advocates, their story of confronting parental failure resonating with enablers worldwide. "We're announcing the Davidson Family Foundation," Robert said, voice steady despite emotion. "Funded by every asset we've liquidated, it will provide legal defense for families prosecuting their own predators, because we know how hard it is to choose justice over blood." "Our son is a cautionary tale," Diane added, "but other parents' children don't have to be. Early intervention, proper values, accountability. These could have saved Brad from becoming what he is. They can save your children." The crowd's response was thunderous. Redemption through action, transformation through truth. It was everything our new foundation represented. Patricia presented our latest innovation, an AI system that could analyze family financial patterns and flag potential predation before major damage occurred. "We call it Guardian," she explained. "It monitors for signs like unusual access patterns, emotional manipulation in communications, and financial behavior changes. Families opt in, voluntarily trading some privacy for protection." "Like a smoke detector for financial predation," someone called out. "Exactly. You hope it never goes off, but you sleep better knowing it's there." Lunch featured round-table discussions. I circulated listening to stories of families, saved predators, exposed cycles broken. The Patel family had restructured their entire business governance. The Richardsons had discovered 2 family members colluding to steal. The O'Briens had prevented their daughter from being financially abused by her husband. Each story reinforced our impact, but also revealed how much work remained. Family predation was endemic, crossing all economic and cultural lines. We lit a candle, but darkness still dominated. The afternoon's panel discussion featured reformed enablers, family members who'd recognized their role in allowing predation. Mom participated her honesty about choosing comfort over children's safety, drawing tears and nods of recognition. I shopped while my daughter was harassed, she stated simply. Maintained image while truth festered. Every parent here who prioritizes appearance over protection, you're enabling the next Brad Davidson. Dad followed, discussing how his embezzlement gave Brad ammunition. Predators collect secrets like weapons. Every compromise you make becomes their leverage. The only defense is radical honesty. Their vulnerability opened floodgates. Audience members shared their own enabling stories, recognizing patterns they dismissed. The discussion became group therapy healing, happening in real time. This is why we do this work, Emma whispered to me. Not just catching predators, but preventing their creation. The day's final presentation was mine. Standing before the crowd, I saw faces that reflected our entire journey. FBI agents who'd built cases on our evidence families. We'd saved journalists who'd spread awareness therapists using our frameworks. 5 years ago, I built financial systems in shadows, protecting wealth while our family rotted from within. Brad's betrayal forced those shadows into light. We could have retreated, rebuilt walls, returned to secrets. Instead, we chose exposure, truth transformation. I clicked through slides showing our impact metrics. Billions protected thousands, trained dozens of predators prosecuted. But the numbers only told part of the story. The Meridian Institute isn't about preserving wealth. It's about preserving families, not the toxic structures that enable predators, but healthy systems that protect the vulnerable while fostering growth. I introduced Phase 2, international expansion, partnering with organizations worldwide to combat family predation globally. Offices in London, Tokyo, Mumbai. Culturally adapted programs recognizing that while predation patterns were universal solutions, needed local relevance. Brad Davidson thought he was stealing $40 million, I concluded. Instead, he launched a movement worth billions in protected assets and immeasurable in saved relationships. His legacy isn't theft, it's the transformation he triggered. The standing ovation felt like collective catharsis. We'd turned victimization into victory, trauma into triumph, a family's shame into society's shield. As the crowd dispersed, spreading our message back to their communities, core family gathered in my office. The same people who'd once met in crisis now assembled in celebration. Look what we built from ashes, Grandma marveled, gazing out at the institute bearing our name. Well, we're not done, Emma reminded us. Every day another Brad starts their predation. Another family enables through silence. Another victim suffers alone. But now they have somewhere to turn, Patricia added. Resources, validation, hope. That didn't exist before us. Marcus pulled up his laptop. Speaking of which, 3 new families reached out during today's ceremony, all recognizing patterns, wanting help before it's too late. The prevention calls are my favorite, Jennifer said. Families being proactive instead of reactive. That's the real culture change. As evening approached, we gathered on the building's roof garden, another therapeutic touch green space for healing conversations. The city sprawled below, lights beginning to twinkle in the gathering dusk. Brad's in solitary again, Robert mentioned quietly, caught trying to recruit other inmates for a new scheme. Even in prison, he can't stop predating. Some people can't be saved, Diane acknowledged, but their victims can be. That's where we focus energy. Dad raised a glass of sparkling water. Alcohol had been removed from family gatherings, acknowledging how it had enabled poor choices. To foundations, he toasted, not just buildings or organizations, but the bedrock values that prevent collapse. To truth, Mom added, uncomfortable, liberating, necessary truth. To family, Emma continued, not perfect, but perfectible. To justice, I concluded. For those who've been silenced, stolen from, and systematically betrayed. As we toasted, I thought about the journey from that first group text, dismissing me to this moment of collective purpose. Brad had wanted to destroy us for money. Instead, he'd destroyed our dysfunction, forcing reconstruction on healthier foundations. The Meridian Institute stood as testament to transformation. Every program we ran, every family we protected, every predator we exposed added another layer to our foundation. We were building something Brad could never understand: power through service wealth, through giving strength, through vulnerability. The night was warm, filled with promise and purpose. Somewhere a family was recognizing warning signs because of our work. Somewhere a victim was finding courage to speak. Somewhere a potential predator was being stopped before they could start. This was our foundation, not money or property or even blood, but the daily choice to protect the vulnerable, expose the truth, and transform pain into purpose. Brad's legacy of destruction had become our blueprint for construction. And on that foundation, solid and true, we would continue building until no family suffered in silence, no predator operated in shadows, and no victim believed their only choice was to endure. The work would never be finished. But tonight, surrounded by family who'd chosen truth over comfort, justice over denial, and love over enabling, we celebrated how far we'd come. The foundation was strong. The building would continue. The call came at 3:27 on a Tuesday afternoon, exactly 1 year after the Meridian Institute's grand opening. I was reviewing expansion proposals when Jennifer burst into my office, face flushed with excitement. "Jacqueline, drop everything. The White House is on line 1. I stared at the blinking light, mind racing. We'd had congressional support, federal partnerships, but this was unprecedented. "Miss Meridian," the voice was professional, efficient. "Please hold for the President's Chief of Staff." What followed was surreal. The administration had been tracking our work, studying our models, analyzing our impact. Family financial predation had been identified as a national security issue. Weakened families meant weakened communities, vulnerable citizens, societal instability. "The President wants to implement your frameworks nationally," Chief of Staff Catherine Williams explained. "Not just recommendations, actual policy. The Family Protection Act of 2025. We need you in Washington next week to lead the advisory committee." I set down the phone with trembling hands. Emma, who'd been alerted by Jennifer, stood in my doorway. "National policy," she breathed. "Jacqueline, this is Brad's victims changing federal law," I finished. "This is our pain becoming everyone's protection." The next week moved at lightning speed. Our legal team prepared briefings. Data analysts compiled impact studies, and success stories were documented for congressional testimony. The family rallied with renewed purpose. This was bigger than our institute, bigger than our story. "I'm coming with you," Grandma announced, brooking no argument at 94. Those politicians need to see the face of generational wealth speaking truth about its vulnerabilities. The Washington meetings exceeded expectations. Senator Patricia Morrison, no relation to Morrison Industries, had championed our cause after her own family discovered an embezzling nephew. The Meridian model, she explained to colleagues, isn't about government overreach. It's about empowering families with tools to protect themselves. Think of it as financial literacy on steroids. The proposed legislation was comprehensive. Mandatory financial transparency training for trusts over 5 million. Federal database of family predation patterns anonymized for privacy. Whistleblower protections for family members reporting financial abuse. Funding for institutes like ours in every state. Educational curricula for schools about recognizing manipulation. "Some will say this is too intrusive," warned Senator James Chen. "Family matters should stay private. Government has no business in personal finances." "Tell that to the Williams family who lost $30 million to their son," I countered. "Or the Johnsons whose daughter committed suicide after financial abuse. Privacy protected their predators, not them." Grandma's testimony to the Senate Finance Committee became legendary. Dressed in her signature purple, she commanded the room like the real estate mogul she'd once been. Senators, I built wealth through intelligence and hard work. I nearly lost it through willful blindness and family politeness. My great-nephew sits in federal prison because we prioritized comfort over accountability. How many families must fall before we admit that loving our relatives doesn't mean enabling their crimes? The opposition came from predictable sources. Libertarian groups crying government interference, wealth management firms fearing regulation, and surprisingly, some family advocacy organizations worried about destroying family bonds. Emma handled the last group brilliantly during a televised debate. Family bonds built on lies aren't bonds. They're chains, she argued. We're not destroying families, we're saving them from the cancer of financial predation. Ask any victim whether they'd prefer prevention or maintaining toxic peace. The media coverage was intense. Our family story, already public, became the face of the movement. Dad's redemption arc particularly resonated. The embezzler turned ethics educator, teaching inmates about choices and consequences. I stole $43,000 and nearly lost everything, he told one interviewer. But that theft gave Brad power over me. Small compromises enable big predators. That's what we're fighting. Mom's transformation from shopping addict to mindful advocate struck different chords. Her blog, From Gucci to Genuine, had hundreds of thousands of followers learning to address emotional voids without retail therapy. Every purchase was a bandage on wounds I wouldn't acknowledge, she wrote. Meanwhile, my daughter was being harassed, my family was rotting, and I was at Nordstrom. Wake up, women. Your children need presents, not presents. The breakthrough came from unexpected tragedy. The Richardson family, early supporters of our institute, made national news when their son murdered his parents after they discovered he'd been stealing from the family trust. The crime shocked the nation. Wealthy suburbs weren't supposed to harbor such violence. This is what happens when financial predation escalates, I told Congress during emergency hearings. The Richardsons might be alive if systems existed to catch their son's theft early. This isn't about money anymore. It's about lives. The Family Protection Act passed with bipartisan support. The signing ceremony was held in the Rose Garden, with families affected by financial predation surrounding the president. Today, we acknowledge a simple truth, the president stated. Families are the foundation of our society. When predators operate within them, they threaten not just individual wealth, but collective stability. The Meridian Institute showed us the way. Now we make that path available to all Americans. Brad watched from federal prison, according to guards who later reported. His reaction was predictable, rage that his crimes had led to his victims gaining national influence. He filed another lawsuit claiming we'd violated his rights by turning his family dispute into federal policy. Let him sue, Marcus said when informed. Every filing just reminds people why these protections are necessary. The implementation phase brought new challenges, training thousands of professionals, establishing state-level institutes, creating culturally sensitive materials for diverse communities. Our team expanded exponentially, but the core mission remained. We're not building an empire, I reminded staff during one heated expansion meeting. We're building shields. Every family protected is a victory, whether they're billionaires or working class. The first year of federal implementation saw remarkable results. Family financial crime reports increased 600%, not from more crimes, but more confidence in reporting. Prosecutions succeeded at higher rates with better evidence collection. Most importantly, prevention programs caught predators early before devastating theft. Patricia called with one particularly moving story. Remember the Chen family from California? Their teenage son was showing Brad-like patterns, entitlement manipulation, early theft. The school counselor recognized signs from our training, intervened early. Kids in therapy, now families in counseling. They caught it before it became criminal. That's the dream, Emma said when I shared the story. Not just stopping Brads, but preventing their creation. The international response exceeded expectations. The European Union invited us to consult on their family protection frameworks. Japan developed culturally adapted versions of our programs. Even closed societies recognized that family predation was universal, requiring coordinated response. Brad's going to be studied in criminology classes worldwide, Jennifer noted with dark satisfaction. The predator whose exposure launched global protection movements, not the legacy he imagined. Personal victories intertwined with professional ones. Dad received commendation for his prison education program, with several inmates crediting him for their decisions to make restitution. Mom's mindfulness workshops helped thousands address underlying emotional issues, driving poor financial choices. Patricia and Emma's work at the expanded center had waiting lists months long. They developed specialized programs for elderly victims, cultural minorities, LGBTQ individuals facing family financial abuse. Each population had unique vulnerabilities requiring tailored approaches. Predation is universal, but it manifests differently, Patricia explained during one training. A gay son threatened with disinheritance faces different pressures than an elderly mother being slowly drained by a caretaker child. One size fits none. The surprise announcement came at our annual gala. Marcus stood to share news that brought tears to many eyes. "I'm getting married," he said simply, "to someone who understands that my brother's crimes don't define me, that working to prevent future Brads is noble, not shameful. She's a survivor herself. Her sister stole her identity and retirement savings. We met at one of our support groups." The applause was thunderous. Love rising from ashes, hope from despair. Marcus had spent years believing Brad's crimes made him unmarriageable. Finding someone who saw his advocacy as strength, not weakness, was profound. That night, I stood on the Institute's roof garden, looking out at a city full of families we'd never meet, but who were safer because of our work. The journey from that dismissive group text to federal policy felt surreal. "Proud of us?" Emma asked, joining me with 2 cups of tea. "Proud, exhausted, hopeful," I admitted. "Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if Brad hadn't been so greedy, if he'd stolen less hidden, better avoided detection." "Then another family would have been the cautionary tale," Emma said firmly. "Predators like Brad always escalate. We're just the family that turned our tragedy into transformation." "The Phoenix family," I mused. "Burned down by betrayal, rising from ashes stronger." "Rising and lifting others," Emma added. "That's the difference. Phoenix rises alone. We're bringing everyone up with us." The city lights twinkled below each light, a home, a family, a potential victim protected by systems we'd built from pain. Brad had wanted $40 million. Instead, he'd created a movement protecting billions, saving relationships beyond calculation, preventing crimes that would never happen because we'd learned from ours. The Phoenix had risen. But more importantly, it had taught others to fly. The 5th annual Meridian Family Reunion took place on a perfect June afternoon at Grandma's estate. The same grounds that had hosted tense formal gatherings now welcomed 300 family members, institute staff, and honorary family, those whose lives had intertwined with ours through shared purpose. I stood at the entrance, greeting arrivals with Emma. The changes in our family were visible in every interaction. Hugs lasted longer, conversations went deeper, laughter came easier. We'd learned the hard way that time was precious and authenticity priceless. "Jacqueline!" a voice called out. I turned to see Patricia approaching with her husband and their newly adopted son Ethan. "Look who's walking!" Ethan, barely 2, toddled between his parents with determination that reminded me of Patricia's own journey back to family. She'd married Michael, a fellow therapist she'd met through the Institute, and they'd built the kind of healthy family dynamic we all aspired to. "He's perfect," I said, kneeling to Ethan's level. "Welcome to your first official Meridian gathering, little one. Fair warning, we're a lot, but we're working on it." Marcus arrived next with his wife Sarah and their twins. His transformation from Brad's shadow to confident advocate still amazed me. Sarah, who'd lost her retirement to her sister's theft, had become our lead trainer for elderly financial protection. The baby slept through the drive, Marcus announced proudly. Sarah's magic touch. Or the white noise app based on federal regulatory hearings, Sarah teased. Nothing puts them to sleep faster than bureaucracy. The party filled with purposeful chaos. Children ran between tables while adults caught up on years' worth of changes. The catering was potluck style. Everyone contributing something made with their own hands, a tradition Mom had started to replace her previous habit of throwing money at events. Connection through creation, she'd explained. When you make something yourself, you're giving time and attention, not just money. Dad worked the grill with Uncle Jerome, their easy partnership, a far cry from the strained formality of past gatherings. Dad's journey from embezzler to ethics educator had been grueling, but he'd emerged genuine in ways his corporate success had never allowed. Burgers are up, he called out, made with beef from the prison farm program. These cows were raised by inmates learning job skills. Rehabilitation never tasted so good. Grandma held court at the main table, now 96, but still sharp as ever. Her memoir had become an international bestseller translated into 15 languages, required reading in family therapy programs worldwide. The royalties all went to the Institute, of course. "Tell us the story again, Grandma Helen," called out one of the younger cousins, "about how you recorded everything." "Well," Grandma said with theatrical flair, "there I was pretending to be a dotty old lady while that fool Brad plotted against us. Little did he know I had more technology in my tablet than NASA used for the moon landing." The children gathered round, mesmerized by the tale of great-great-grandma, the secret agent. We'd turned our trauma into teachable stories, ensuring the next generation understood both the dangers of family predation and the power of speaking truth. Jennifer approached with her partner Lisa and their daughter Maya. "The Singapore office is fully operational," she reported, even at a family gathering unable to completely shut off CEO mode. "The Chen family sends their regards. They're hosting their own reunion next month, first time in a decade." "Another family rebuilt," Emma said, joining us with David. Their wedding rings still looked new after 6 months. He'd specialized in psychiatric treatment for financial criminals, often consulting on cases involving family predators. "Speaking of rebuilding," David said, "I have news from the federal facility. Brad's been transferred to solitary again, caught trying to manipulate newer inmates into contacting their families for investment opportunities." "Still predating," Mom said sadly, overhearing as she passed with her famous potato salad, made from scratch, a point of enormous pride for someone who'd never cooked until age 59. "Some people can't be saved, but their victims can," Robert added firmly. He and Diane had become fixtures at the Institute, running support groups for parents of predators. Their willingness to publicly own their enabling had helped hundreds of families recognize their own toxic patterns. The afternoon's program began with Marcus as MC. "Welcome to the 5th annual Phoenix Gathering. Because yes, Emma, I'm keeping that name despite your objections." "It's pretentious," Emma called out, laughing. "It's accurate," Marcus countered. "We burned, we rose, we soar. Deal with it, Dr. Meridian Chen." The first speaker was unexpected. Lily Chen Melissa and Angela's daughter, now 7 and confident beyond her years. "My moms work at the Institute," she said clearly into the microphone. "They help families stay safe from bad people who want to take their money. I'm proud of them, and I know if anyone ever tries to hurt our family, we have 300 people who will help us. That makes me feel brave." There wasn't a dry eye as Lily skipped back to her parents. From the mouths of babes, the simple truth of what we'd built. A network of protection, validation, and support that made children feel brave. Patricia presented the year's impact report through interpretive storytelling rather than dry statistics. "Imagine a stadium filled with families," she began. "Now imagine it full. That's how many we've helped this year alone. Each seat a story, each row a recovery, each section a success against predation." The numbers were staggering. 50,000 families directly served, $3 billion in prevented theft. 800 predators prosecuted, 12 countries with adapted programs, one movement changing global understanding of family financial abuse. But the real wealth, Patricia continued, is in this room. People who chose truth over comfort, growth over stagnation, protection over reputation. We can't measure that in dollars. Mom took the stage next, her transformation still striking. The woman who'd once lived in designer clothes now wore simple linen, her presentation focused on internal wealth rather than external display. I spent 40 years shopping for happiness, she shared, buying things to fill holes in my heart. Meanwhile, my family was fracturing, my daughter was being harassed, and my husband was stealing to fund my habits. Today, I own less but have more. The wealth of genuine relationships, earned trust, and the knowledge that my worst day living truthfully beats my best day living lies. Her workshop signups filled immediately. Former shopping addicts, enablers, and conflict avoiders all wanted to learn how she'd transformed from person who threw money at problems to someone who faced them directly. As sunset approached, I stood to give the keynote. Looking out at the assembled crowd, blood family chosen, family professional family, I felt the weight of our journey. 5 years ago, my family sent a group message saying I should step away. My Aunt Martha gave it a thumbs up. I responded by dismantling the financial house of cards they didn't know they lived in. What followed was devastation, revelation, and ultimately transformation. I recounted our story not as history, but as blueprint. Every family had their Brads, their enablers, their silent victims. What mattered was what happened next, the choice to expose truth or maintain comfortable lies. Brad wanted $40 million. He's in federal prison while we're changing federal law. He destroyed one family and created a movement protecting millions. His legacy isn't theft. It's the shield we built from his sword. The true wealth in this room isn't monetary. It's Emma's courage in speaking truth, Mom and Dad's determination to change, Patricia's strength in returning, Marcus's choice to denounce his brother, Robert and Diane's painful honesty, Grandma's wisdom in recording everything, each of you who chose difficult truth over easy lies. I pulled out a letter worn from reading. Brad wrote me from prison last month. He wanted me to know he's planning to sue again, that he'll never stop fighting to reclaim his inheritance. He signed it, your superior cousin. Laughter rippled through the crowd. The idea of Brad as superior to anyone had become absurd. I wrote back, I continued, told him that his inheritance had been redistributed to every family. We protect every predator. We stop every victim we empower. That his legacy lives in the Emma Meridian Center, the Davidson Foundation, the federal protections bearing our name. That he's remembered not as the man who stole millions, but as the cautionary tale that saved billions. He didn't respond, but his cellmate did, thanking us for Dad's ethics program that helped him understand how he'd hurt his family. Even in maximum security, our work reaches those ready to change. The formal program concluded with Grandma's blessing. To family, she said, raising her glass of lemonade. Not perfect, but perfectible. Not without predators, but with protections. Not silent, but singing truth. May we continue rising, lifting others as we soar. As the party continued into evening, children playing flashlight tag while adults shared stories and strategies, I found myself on the porch with Emma, watching our transformed family. Worth it, she asked quietly. All the pain exposure work. Every second, I replied without hesitation. We traded false wealth for true riches, traded one toxic family for hundreds of healthy ones, traded silence for voice, compliance for courage, enabling for empowerment. What would you tell yourself 5 years ago? The woman reading that group text. I considered carefully. I'd tell her the wealth she protected in shadows was nothing compared to what she'd build in light, that the family rejecting her was clearing space for the family she'd choose, that Brad's betrayal was a gift disguised as disaster. Think we'll ever fully trust again? Emma asked. The way we did before, No, I said honestly, but that's good. Blind trust enabled Brad. Now we have earned trust, verified trust with boundaries. That's healthier. David joined us, slipping his arm around Emma. Marcus wants to know if you're ready for the surprise. What surprise? The lights dimmed as Marcus called everyone to attention. A screen lowered showing video messages from families worldwide. Thank you, Meridian Institute, for saving our family business from my brother's embezzlement. Your programs helped us recognize the warning signs in time. My children have their college funds because of your early intervention. We thought family meant keeping secrets. You taught us it means keeping each other safe. Message after message, face after face, family after family saved by systems born from our pain. The true wealth we'd created wasn't in protected dollars, but in protected people, preserved relationships, and prevented tragedies. The final message was from a federal prisoner, face obscured for privacy. My name is James. I'm serving 10 years for stealing from my family trust. Your father's program in here, teaching about choices and consequences. It's the first time anyone explained how I got here. I'm writing letters to my kids, apologizing, trying to break the cycle. Thank you for seeing criminals as capable of change. As the screen faded, I realized Brad had given us an invaluable gift. Not intentionally, his intentions were purely selfish. But his betrayal had forced us to choose between comfortable decay and painful growth. We'd chosen growth, and in growing had lifted countless others. The party continued late into the night. Families exchanged numbers, planning regional meetups. Institute staff recruited volunteers. Children fell asleep in piles like puppies, safe in the knowledge that their family had 300 protectors. One last toast, Grandma announced as midnight approached. To Brad Davidson, federal prisoner number 447829. May his remaining years be long enough to see the good that grew from his evil. May he understand that wealth isn't what you take, but what you give. And may he know that his true legacy is the protection of every family he'll never have the chance to harm. To Brady, we echoed, raising glasses one final time. Not in celebration of him, but of what we'd become despite him. As guests departed, promises to stay connected. Filling the air, I helped Grandma to her room. Jacqueline, she said softly, I won't see many more of these gatherings, but I'm leaving knowing our family is stronger than ever. You took my foundation and built a fortress. More than that, you taught others to build their own. We all built it, Grandma. Your wisdom, Emma's courage, everyone's contributions. Yes, but you were the architect. Never forget, when they told you to step away, you stepped up instead. That made all the difference. Later, as Emma and I cleaned up moving in the easy rhythm of sisters who'd become best friends, she asked the question viewers always wondered. Any regrets? Anything you'd change? I considered all we'd lost. Privacy, innocence, the illusion of family perfection. Then I thought of all we'd gained. Purpose, authenticity, the ability to protect millions from experiencing our pain. Not one thing, I said firmly. This is our true wealth, the family we chose to become the families we protect the future we're building. Brad thought he was stealing money. He was actually setting us free. As we turned off the lights, the estate settling into peaceful quiet, I thought about everyone who'd shared our journey. The FBI agents who'd become advocates, the prosecutors who'd become reformers, the families who'd become warriors against predation. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, more families discovering their Brads, more victims needing support, more predators requiring exposure. The work would never end. But tonight, surrounded by the true wealth of transformed relationships and purposeful lives, we rested in victory. Not the victory of defeating Brad, that had been necessary, but insufficient. The real victory was in who we'd become, a family that protected the vulnerable, spoke difficult truths, and turned trauma into triumph. To those reading our story, wondering if their own family harbors predators or enablers, I leave you with this. Your true wealth isn't in your accounts, but in your accountability. not in your assets, but in your authenticity, not in maintaining false peace, but in protecting real people. If you recognize Brad in someone you love, speak up. If you see yourself in our enablers, seek help. If you're a victim suffering in silence, know that your voice matters and support exists. The Meridian Institute and hundreds like it stand ready to help you build your own fortress of protection. Family financial predation thrives in shadow and silence. Bring it to light, break the silence. Build something better from the ashes of what was. Your true wealth is waiting on the other side of truth. Thank you for joining the Meridian family's journey from betrayal to triumph. May your own path lead to truth protection and the true wealth of authentic relationships. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay honest, and remember, the family you choose to become is more powerful than the family you were born into.